to become energy independent and fast to bring down energy prices. But I will leave you with a final more positive note, because I mentioned it earlier, we are actually at the brink of having a compromise now on something that is also a very difficult question, which is to finally ban the import of Russian energy. This is not without consequences, it's not easy, but we do it now. And this means that we can finally say no to Putin. No, we will no longer let you blackmail our countries. No, we will no longer help to indirectly finance your war. Yes, we will stand on our own legs and produce our own energy.
Thank you very much indeed, Commissioner. It's been lovely to have you with us. I know you're a busy chap, so you're going to have to go. But that was really great to see you, and we're going to leave it there. Thank you. Good. So, welcome everyone to the latest episode in a 6-part series we're making here at COP30 on energy efficiency and the built environment. And we're also focusing quite a bit on the Horizon and also the LIFE projects, Horizon being more sort of innovation projects and LIFE being more kind of environment projects that are also helping the European Union to innovate on this topic of energy efficiency and energy generally. We're delighted to have just talked to the Commissioner for Energy and Housing, Dan Jurgensen, a little bit about that, and he also made some comments clearly about the benefits of having these Horizon and LIFE projects. Now we've got some new guests, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this. And let me just welcome our first guest. It's Dr. Rianne Mari Thomas. She's the CEO of the Green Finance Institute, and let's welcome you to the show here in Belém at COP30.
Thanks very much, Nick. Delighted to be here.
Yeah. The conditions are not perfect here, so it's very noisy in the studio, isn't it, with all the air conditioners blasting out. I hope they're environmentally friendly, but we'll keep our fingers crossed. Rianne, tell the audience a little bit, what is the Green Finance Institute and its relevance for decarbonising the built environment?
Well, thanks very much for the opportunity to showcase some of our work. The Green Finance Institute, we're now 6 years old. We initially started in London, but we are now almost 83 in number across 10 different countries. We work very closely with governments, with industry, and with finance providers to figure out how do we get more government balance sheet and private capital into solutions such as the built environment or transport or carbon dioxide removal, sustainable aviation fuel, and as well as nature-based solutions. So this sounds pretty accepted way of working these days, but 6 years ago that was a pretty bold idea that in order for us to actually mobilize more capital, we shouldn't focus on greening finance as a sector, but instead we should focus on how do we finance green. So very much using the finance industry as the facilitator for the real economy transitions we want to see in things like energy efficiency and the built environment. And I use the word facilitator very advisedly because obviously the policymakers are the enabler and we need to work hand in hand with them, which is why coming to COP is so important, because this is where you actually bring together those different stakeholders and actually have those conversations and have those collaborations and actually move forward.
One of the main themes today in this 6-part series is to look at energy efficiency as a service. And I was trying to think about that a little bit myself, because I don't own a car. I live in Berlin. I don't own a car, but I can get a car if I want it with an app. Mm-hmm. So I don't have ownership of a motor car. I don't think this is exactly a perfect example, but there is this sense of not owning things, but sort of borrowing them, leasing them, whatever. Is this an emerging idea in the built environment and energy efficiency?
That's a great analogy, actually. It's perfect in that rather than actually owning the infrastructure for your home or for your business, actually, you actually lease the energy. So the way it would work in a residential setting, for example, is you pay a predictable fee every month for an energy service provider to provide you with a comfortable home. So in times of unpredictable energy prices, you can see the appeal to that. You also, as a consumer, get over the issue of the upfront cost. That upfront cost does get passed on to the service provider. Somebody's actually got to pay the capital for low carbon technologies, but it makes it more appealing for the consumer, which is why we're seeing this grow. And as you say, people are getting their heads around this idea of not actually owning their own assets, but leasing them. And good on you for not owning a car, by the way.
I do own a bicycle as well, so I have some responsibility. Okay, stay with us, please. Rosalinda, we're going to go to Rosalinda van der Vlies. And I'm just scrolling down my little thing here. She is Director of Just Transition, Consumers, Energy Efficiency and Innovation at the European Commission. So quite a small portfolio there. Rosalinda, lovely to see you coming in on the magic of Zoom. Tell us a little bit about how you see this energy efficiency on demand concept, energy efficiency as a service.
Yeah, hi Nick, great to see you. And indeed, great analogy. I mean, I always say to people that energy efficiency as a service, it's kind of like Netflix for energy. So, you pay a fixed fee and you can just, like choose your services. So really cool. So as a European Commission, we are really promoting this energy efficiency as a service. We have enshrined it in our EU legislation. So we really encourage our member states as well to make sure that there is an enabling framework for energy service providers to really make sure that they can provide these services. And the idea is really that, much more people are starting to, see energy also as a service and not something that they need to basically purchase big heat pumps or other things in their houses. And it's also really cool that we have specific projects that we are funding through our EU funding projects like Horizon Europe, but also our LIFE program on clean energy transition, that we really want to develop concepts like smart energy services to really make sure that this will become more innovative and also more widespread in the European Union and beyond, of course, as well.
Something provided with me my glasses, which is really handy. It was just a bit of a panic when the Energy and Housing Commissioner turned up, and we thought, oh my God, he's not coming. And I was just standing around, and then suddenly, whang, we're in the studio for an interview. Rosalinda, that's great. Just to say, there seems a lot of interest in this issue of energy efficiency on demand, energy as efficiency as a service from the small and the medium-sized companies in the EU. And there was a bit of a conversation here a few days ago. We had the European Investment Bank with us, and of course they're putting a substantial amount of money into energy efficiency right now, aimed at the small and medium-sized enterprises. And I think we're all hoping that energy as a service will be certainly part of that. Not least because they're working with Bertrand Piccard, the solar pulse explorer with the solar powered plane, who's got this now institute working on that. Do you think this could be a game changer with the European Investment Bank, really getting involved in this right now?
Absolutely, Nick. And I'm really impressed with what you learned about energy efficiency. But as a European Commission, we love to partner with the European Investment Bank, particularly because the European Investment Bank can provide guarantees. So they have like specific financial services that they're offering that can really help to roll out the energy as a service companies. And with the money that the EIB is providing, we are also attracting a lot of private investments. And that's exactly what we want to do. We as a public policymaker, obviously we are investing in making sure that energy as a service can be rolled out, but we also need to leverage the private investments, and that's why we love to collaborate with the EIB. So the SME instrument that you mentioned that the EIB has launched, the EIB provides 17.5 billion euros in guarantees, and it's expected that over 350,000 SMEs in the European Union can benefit from that. And of course, we expect that the part will be dedicated also to energy as a service rollout.
Let's go now to Francois Johnston. Again, he's president of Johnston Circular and a key part of the team at Product as a Service to Accelerate Cooperation and Circular Transformation, or PACT. Francois, tell us, what is PACT first?
Yes, thank you very much, Nick. PACT is a project funded by private companies and by ADEME. ADEME is the French governmental agency for sustainable development. And you have also Michelin company funding such the project, and the BASF company funding the project. And PACT is about advocating for product as a service business models to accelerate the transition. The beauty of product as a service is the same as energy as a service. The minute the supplier commits to a result, instead of selling a product, you don't sell the product, you sell a result. The minute you commit to a result, your objective is to use as few energy or raw mats as possible for a given usage. Very simple example, when you sell mileage as a service, kilometers as a service, to transportation company as a tire supplier, your objective is to put as few tires as possible for a given mileage. The less tires you use, the higher your profitability. That's the mechanism of product as a service. Same for energy as a service. So you see that happening in many different industries. You see that happening in the tire industry, in the agricultural industry, in the build industry, which is the topic today. You've got Care, which is a company in Singapore offering air conditioning as a service, cooling as a service. You've got ETAP Lighting in the Netherlands offering light as a service. And these companies retain ownership of the assets, and therefore their objective for a given temperature in a building, for example, their objective is to use as few energy as possible. The less energy they will use, the higher their profitability. So it's not a very new idea, in fact, but it's being pulled and accelerated by the absolute necessity to disconnect economic activity from raw mat consumption. So PACT is this network of 800 plus members in 20 plus countries in Europe advocating for such innovative models.
Efficiency, or the built environment, could this be that products like, I don't know, heat pumps or digital systems for homes or factories could become products as a service as opposed to buying them?
Very much so, Nick. I'll give you an example of a companies producing dehydrators, okay, for the industry. So they're selling dehydrators machines to nuclear power plants or to companies producing whatever goods, where they need to control the air in the workshops. Instead, and we're working with them today, instead of selling dehydration machines, they want to sell a quality of the air in terms of temperature and level of humidity, and commit on a decrease of energy consumption. So instead of selling dehydration machines, they are shifting to selling air quality, taking the risk, sharing the risk with their end users of, ensuring the quality of the air. So that's exactly what's happening right now.
Okay, that's a really interesting concept. Okay, as we mentioned before, this collaborative series from COP30, it's coming with the European Commission's Energy Directorate and also the Global Covenant of Mayors. And we're trying to raise awareness to an extent of the Horizon and LIFE projects supported by the European Commission, trying to overcome some hurdles to, for example, energy efficiency. So let's hear it from two people who are going to talk about a very interesting LIFE project, EU LIFE project called We Share, which kind of really fits the theme here. Let's welcome first up Paul Robrecht of POM Antwerp, who works on this, and also with him we've got Alexandra Cassisi, and she's working on that, and she's a director with the Rimond Innovation Lab. I hope I've got everybody's affiliations correctly. And they're looking at sharing energy among firms in business parks. Now, first up, Paul, why would you want to do this? Why is it a good idea? And what's the overall aim? Paul, if you could start first.
Hi, Nick. Thank you for involving us in this program. Why should we do this? So we look at the business park at the hotspot of energy use, and these business parks are key in the energy transition. So that's the starting point. And what we do with the WeShare project is that we support the companies in improving their energy efficiency. So that's the link with previous discussed items. And we also maximize self-consumption. And all this results in a lower energy cost and steps towards decarbonization.
So that's the basic principle. Alexandra, what is your involvement in this?
I am the director of Rimond Innovation Lab. Rimond is an engineering, construction and technology company. We like to be challenged with really landmark projects, and we strongly believe that energy can change our point of view in terms of efficiency of construction. We are the coordinators of WeShare, and we are somehow trusting the model of a scalable and replicable business energy community. We see energy community as a pivotal model for the energy transition. This project has been financed, as you said, by the European Commission through the LIFE program with almost 2 million euros. We have 8 partners involved across Belgium, Portugal and Spain, and we are representing businesses, industry and also the public actors involved. Let's say we really see the future of energy as collaborative, as local, for a regeneration. So this is what we aim to do. If you want, I can just mention a few numbers for illustrating the impact of our projects. Through our business community, we want to avoid 2,700 tons of CO2 production, and we aim to produce locally 10 gigawatt hours of renewable energy. So this for us is really a strong impact and a very challenging project.
Lovely, thank you. Now, I was trying to Google yesterday how many business parks there are in the European Union, and I kind of gave up. There seem to be a lot, let's put it that way. I mean, the potential for this is actually quite huge, right? You're doing something in Antwerp, I know, Paul, but there are obviously these other locations in other countries. But the European Union itself has loads and loads and loads of business parks. If we could scale this up across the European Union, then this could make a major contribution to energy efficiency savings and profitability of companies in the European Union. So when does this project end, and what are you going to do with it afterwards? Want to answer, Paul or Alexandra? Either of you can chirp in here with a reply.
Yes, if you want me just to mention, sorry, I forgot where we are working. That is very important. We are working in Belgium, in the municipality of Antwerp, in Portugal, close to the city of Sines and the port of Sines, and in Spain, close to the city of Madrid in Getafe municipality. So we are working in areas with a really very interesting industrial parks, and this is the way we want to try to test these models.
And maybe, Paul, just to you, what is the biggest challenge that you're facing in Antwerp? Is it trying to get the companies to understand how collaboration is a good thing, or what is your biggest challenge in implementing the project where you are?
Yeah, the biggest challenge is indeed, as you point out, that raise the awareness and SMEs that this energy is a real main topic for them, because we have all regulations coming up, but also cost, and also we have the question of the energy security, also discussed previous. So this is really important to face this, and we think that and we prove it with our pilot cases, that we really can reduce the use of the fossil fuels, because of this project we maximize the self-consumption of the companies of their own locally produced renewable energy, and what they have in excess they can share in an energy community throughout the local ecosystem. So it means that the complete business park becomes more independent of the regular, let's say, grid. So we can move towards really make some steps, small steps, difficult steps, because it's very difficult to raise. And also that maybe also to like to add that SMEs are really, energy is not their core business. They want to produce things, they want to sell things, or whatever. So, but energy has really a big impact on their businesses. So I think it's important that there are intermediary organizations, such as we do from the province of Antwerp in Belgium, that can support this SMEs in the steps towards the decarbonization. And also it's very important that we can rely on the support and regulation of the EU, but also by funding, like in this case the LIFE projects, where we can really show, because this is not like a book, this is really happening on the field. So as we speak, we are avoiding CO2, we are sharing energy, and we want to show that it's really working. So, and as you pointed out, Nick, there are a lot of business parks over, I can't assume how many. So if we can show on the small scale, on this pilot, that this is really working, and we can multiply it, we can have a really big impact.
Rihanna, you wanted to say something. I think you wanted to jump in, yeah?
I really did, because I felt there were some really important points made there. We've spoken to date about the benefits to consumers, and there is research showing that energy efficiency in homes can save up to 1/3 on energy bills, which is obviously key as we start trying to bring stakeholders with us on this journey. But some clear points also made about energy security, which is why energy efficiency is such a compelling topic. 2/3 of energy is wasted from its primary sources. That's something like 5% of global GDP, and something like 40% of overall fossil expenditure. And so when you look at that, that's doing nothing productive for the economy whatsoever. And so when we're, it seems the appropriate comment to make as we're sitting here a stone's throw away from the UN negotiations, but the International Energy Authority has energy efficiency as its largest component of actually reducing emissions when it comes to energy by 2050. It's a key part of their scenario. So it sounds cliched, but it's a cliche for a good reason. The cleanest form of energy is the energy that you don't use at all.
Absolutely. There were some good numbers there, actually, which I didn't know. Rosalinda, just a reflection on what you're hearing a little bit. This is just a glimpse into one project among literally, it almost seems tens of thousands, but maybe it's just thousands of projects under Life and Horizon. But it's an interesting one, right? Because it's very practical, right? And quite straightforward.
Yes, absolutely, Nick. And for me, you really hit the nail on the hammer, or whatever the expression is, when you spoke about and asked the question, like, what are you going to do with the results? And how can we roll out the results, and make sure that, everywhere in Europe, these results are used? And I think that is a very big challenge that we are facing. So I think the project is doing amazing work, really demonstrating that this can work in 3 countries. But once the project is finalized, I think the most important thing is that we don't, go on to a new project, but that we actually, pause, and then we really try together to make sure that the results are replicate it in many other different places so that we can have a cumulative impact of this. And I think this is a big challenge, and that's why I think it's so important that we talk about these projects, we raise awareness, and then also maybe some other governments that may be watching today are thinking, hey, this is really great what's going on, in Antwerp. Once this project is finalized, maybe we can use this and also replicate it in our own country.
Rosalinda, when you're at these climate conferences, there's always a long conversation about so-called bankable projects that the rich countries can invest in the poorer countries, and always a complaint that there aren't enough bankable projects in Africa or Asia. But actually, this is also an issue in the European Union, right? So in other words, if these results that eventually come through from, say, this project we share, can be shown to be, as it were, bankable, then it could be kind of shuffled in line for a European Investment Bank funding that makes it replicable across the European Union and maybe even beyond. So maybe there's even a kind of strange process here going on behind the scenes of like a beauty competition, which I was totally unaware of, but I'm just guessing. But it's a thought, Rosalinda.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think we call it kind of like the innovation journey, where you start with research and development, then you demonstrate that actually, your solution can work in practice. And then it's a matter of scaling up and really deploying the solutions on the market. At this moment in the European Union, there are different funding instruments that come in at a different moment in the innovation journey, which makes it quite difficult for companies if they want to really move from the research to the real market deployment. This is something that we want to fix in the next multi-annual financial programming period of the European Union with a proposal for a European Competitiveness Fund. And I think this is a big challenge, but I do think that, with this new proposal for the European Competitiveness Fund, we're moving in the right direction here.
Because I know that, and it's very kindly that you joined us on this show, because what you're doing is really fascinating. I mean, ultimately, we all want to be in the circular economy, don't we? Whether it's in energy or whether it's in anything, we want to be in the circular economy. That's where the cool place is. Which cool place is quite relevant when we're talking about climate change, I suppose. But Francois, I mean, you've heard this conversation. I know that you're dealing more on the product side of things, but circularity is still remarkably low in economies, isn't it, in terms of rates? I think the Netherlands is number one. Is it 9% circular? And then it starts tailing off a bit. Can a mixture of products and the way we handle energy deliver a faster form of circularity? Maybe that's the way of putting it.
Yeah, you're very right, Nick. The problem with circularity, I mean, it's its rate of adoption. Right now, it's between 7% and 12% according to how you measure it in Europe, but it remains pretty low. And one of the major difficulties is the fact that companies struggle to make money with circularity, to make it super clear and super bluntly. People, be it in B2C or in B2B, do not pay a premium for green solutions. It is very unfortunate, but that's the reality of markets. People in B2B or in B2C don't pay a premium for green solutions. So companies have to struggle with that and to find innovative ways to bring value to consumers or to end users and to improve their environmental footprint. And this is exactly what energy as a service or product as a service is doing, because you're not selling green solutions, you're selling a better life, easy to use, peace of mind. I mean, when Michelin is selling euros per kilometer instead of selling tires, it's not just another way to put products on the market, it's a way to commit towards safety and peace of mind for transportation companies. When, I don't know, ETAP Lighting is selling light as a service, they're not selling just green solutions, they are selling complete peace of mind solutions for their end users. And this is what end users are paying for. So that's why we believe that product as a service and energy as a service can transform the way people consume things, can transform consumption in Europe. And by the way, this is the reason why we are a candidate to the next Horizon financing, one of the Horizon financing project with the PACT community, because we strongly believe we have a massive lever to transform consumption in Europe, and that these new business models will accelerate circular solutions.
Things up indeed, Francois, and interesting to know about these new developments, Rosalinda, and also Francois, your perspective is very important indeed. Our wonderful guests doing the We Share. One thing I would say is I do know that there are some of the projects we've got in this series with heat pumps where they kind of do a bit what you're saying, Francois, which is they not only aggregate and bring together large numbers of buyers in terms of household heat pumps, you know, street by street, or streets by street, but they also bring in experts who reassure the householder how to actually, you know, work with a heat pump so people aren't scared of heat pumps. And this is also important, the psychological side to this story as well as the economic side. I think we're coming to the end of the show here. Rian, it's been absolutely lovely to have you with us. Best of luck. You're working in Denmark, in the European Union, and which other countries?
And we have presence in Brussels as well.
In Brussels as well?
We do.
So it started off in Britain and now it's moving to Brussels. So, well, maybe not moving to Brussels, but staying in Britain. But it's nice that Britain's still doing things in Europe. Let's put it that way. I try to do my best as well. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. The next episode of Energy Efficiency First, which is the name of the series. I've said it so many times before, Rosalinda, that I forgot today, but that's what it's called. The next one is on the 18th, I think, and we're going to look at poverty and energy. And that's an interesting subject, all on its own, through the lens of Horizon and Life projects. Thanks, everybody, indeed. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Welcome to the latest in our Nature Positive Dialogues, a series of interviews and live panels from COP30 in Belém, broadcast by We Don't Have Time in partnership with the Nature Positive Initiative. And I'm joined now by Ilona Szabo de Carvalho, who's co-founder and president of the Instituto Igarapé. Welcome, Ilona.
So much, Rema. Wonderful to be with you.
Fantastic. And let's get right into it. So your think tank really looks at that connection between security, nature, and climate. And could you perhaps explain a bit to us, how is criminality or its environmental impacts affecting the nature positive ambition?
Yes, for sure. Might not be so straightforward when you hear it first, but we are here at the heart of the Amazon forest that all of us know that we have to save from deforestation. So to start, I want to say 90% or over 90% of deforestation in the Amazon is illegal. So it's driven by illicit economies or environmental crime that converge with non-environmental crime. And what happens is that this destabilizes this land use change and this deforestation, degradation of the forest, destabilize this biome. And instead, some parts of the Amazon that, of course, is a major carbon sink, starts to emit carbon. So just alters the ecosystem service that the forest has preserved. At the same time, when this happens and a lot of carbon goes to the atmosphere by just degrading or destroying this forest, you also contribute to accelerate climate change. And climate change, on the other hand, also disturbs the resilience of the forest. So, for instance, in the tropical forest of the Amazon, we never had wildfires with the intensity that we have now. We had man-made fires, but now you can have wildfires in a tropical forest. So also the forest lose the resilience of the extreme events that we have to battle when the temperature rises. So it's a vicious cycle with these illicit economies that we have to break. So that's what, when we talk about the tropical forest in special, we have to understand that the link to illicit economies, to illicit supply chains, especially of commodities, is driving this deforestation.
And what would you say are some of the links between nature-related crime and corruption or human rights abuses?
So unfortunately, crime cooperates more than the rule of law, institutions, law enforcement, and others. And we need to understand that they don't operate in a vacuum. So these criminal organizations, for instance, that smuggle drugs or do illicit gold mining or timber extraction, they share the same infrastructure, the same routes. So it's a web of organizations that also have linkages to corruption. So it could be local officials, regional officials, like people in office and in very strategic positions. They need fraudulent documentation. So it's a interlinkage, really an interrelation of environmental and non-environmental crime that of course also links to a laundering of this finance and of the proceeds of these illicit economies, so they become licit. Because, for instance, we know that drugs are illegal products, but timber, gold, or cattle, they are actually legal, but they could have an illicit origin. And that's what we need to understand and to tackle. So we've been working to support the institutions that need to enforce the legislations, to track this better, to understand these dynamics better, so they can actually act to prevent, but also throughout to avoid that illegal products are being sold legally and consumed by us.
Can you share, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges or obstacles that are hampering local communities from embracing the nature positive transition? And what would be some of the enablers that would support them in getting there?
This is a very important question because it deserves and actually needs a paradigm shift. We need to understand that peoples and forests coexist for a long time. We cannot look at this only through a pure conservation perspective, because the peoples that are inhabiting here, they are part of the ecosystem and they preserve the forest. But if they don't have any alternative, they end up like feeding this kind of exploitative economic models that are based on the extraction. So we have to offer alternatives. And I think the lack of alternatives, economic, sustainable alternatives, is one problem. The lack of state presence, opening the space for these organized criminal networks to, let's say, be much more present and threaten these peoples of the forests in their territories. I don't say this is linked to poverty, inequalities, and a more systemic socio-economic issue. But on the good side, I think Brazil and other countries in the Amazon basin are really pioneering bioeconomies, which are the economies that are trying to revert this logic of exploitation and to work with nature, right? I mean, to be there for today, but also for the future generations. And I do believe that there is a lot already going on, that this can be scaled up in a way that alternatives are given, that we can also prioritize the cooperation for tackling these illicit economies, this environmental crime. And we're very happy that for the first time, we've been working a lot on the synergies between nature and climate. These issues are entering the action agenda, the Leaders Summit agenda, and I hope also we'll take a peek to the official negotiations, since they're so strategic to this balance of, to climate stability these days.
So we're here in Belém, in Brazil, for COP30. What would you say are some of the really key areas of action that we need to see at this COP? And how do you see Brazil and the region really leaning into the leadership of that?
Well, I think, we used to say in Brazil until these days that it's a forest COP. And of course, this is not to say that we should not look into fossil fuels transition. That's not either or, it's and. So we have to take advantage of where we are to bring this to the heart. And Brazil is pioneering not only bioeconomies, but nature finance models to just start valuing nature, going beyond carbon. Carbon markets are very important to this equation, but we need to go beyond nature. So Brazil is pushing also for a novel financial instrument called the Tropical Forest Forever Facility, the TFFF. So we are at a moment where we can actually understand that it's a win-win situation. And the way we're framing this is that we have to rescue Mission 1.5, and we're only going to do this if we have a roadmap to transitioning away from fossil fuels, but also a roadmap to transitioning away from deforestation, so a roadmap for zero deforestation. And this started this discussion in Glasgow as a voluntary commitment, then in Dubai as a consensus, and I think COP30 could really advance a roadmap to zero deforestation. And the third pillar to this equation is we need carbon capture at scale. And again, bioeconomy come into play because nature-based solutions are the best technology, affordable, available, and scalable today. What we need to really foster and promote is confidence building between the North and South countries, so this market can be of high integrity. And part of the work we do at the Igarapé, at our impact unit, the Green Bridge facility, is to help high integrity finance and enterprises to thrive.
And one last question, if I may. Can you just express what does nature positive mean to you?
So in this context, I would say it means a lot, but at COP30, I would say that we need to show the world that new economic models that thrive on the abundance of nature are possible. They already exist, and they are here to be just scaled and taken to other places where these resources are available. And we need to abandon the ones that thrive on the exploitation and degradation of ecosystems. So Brazil can be this nature superpower. It's already on the way to be, but it also can, I would say, promote this idea that many other countries that still have this abundance of resources value them in a different way. So let's build economic models that thrive with the abundance of nature and not with the exploitation of nature. This is nature positive to me.
Thank you very much. Ilona Zabel de Carvalho from the Igarapé Institute. Thanks for joining us. We've heard lots now about important action forward to support local communities and sustainable prosperity through the sustainable bioeconomy for a nature positive transition that's good for nature, the climate and people as well. Thank you.
I think every single person on this planet needs to be educated and re-educated about climate change. We are dedicated as the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change to embrace this education issue.
We can look into the eyes of our children, our grandchildren, and we can finally say, tell them that we have joined hands to bequeath a more habitable world.
L'accord de Paris pour le climat est accepté.
State Congress voted to ban abortion. Alternate universe located. Global temperatures rise. The effects on social media on Generation Z. To avoid catastrophe, rising sea levels, and dying coral reefs, the epicenter of a global pandemic. No exception for rape or incest.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Climate Hub. The New York Times, where'd that come from? Because I was so excited that you arrived. You just ran in front of the camera. The We Don't Have Time studio here in Belém, Brazil. So, we are going to look forward now to something really, really exciting. Something that we're going to broadcast in a few days here at the studio, here and also online, of course. It's a concert. And this is not a regular concert. So it's a footage from Love Your Mother. the world's first concert for nature, and it was recorded in the Amazon rainforest. So that's going to be broadcasted here on We Don't Have Time in a few days. But we're so lucky to have some people involved in this wonderful event here in our studio and also with us via Zoom. So I'd like to introduce my guests here in the studio first. We have Antonique Smith. You are co-founder and CEO of Climate Revival. And thank you for joining us. You just started in, so I got a little bit thrown off, but I'm so delighted you're here.
So
and also we have Reverend Yearwood. You're president and CEO of Hip Hop Caucus.
Glad to be here.
Glad to have you back. You've been on many of our shows, so I'm delighted to have you. And Jarvis Smith, you're with us via Zoom, and you're founder of PEA Awards and My Green Pod. Wonderful,
yes,
Jarvis.
hello.
Hi, Jarvis.
Hello from the UK.
Okay. How are you today?
I'm great, thank you very much. I'm sorry I'm not with you all, but I know Rev and Antonika holding the fort there for us.
Yes, she is, indeed. So, Jarvis, let's start by asking the overarching question. Why would you throw a concert in the Amazon rainforest?
Well, I mean, what's unique about this concert is it was for nature. It wasn't for people. It wasn't artists coming to sing for an audience, to perform. It was actually in an offering of gratitude and appreciation to, Pachamama, to Mother Earth, Gaia, whatever you want to call our beautiful planet, this living, conscious, breathing planet that has provided every single form of sustenance, life force, commodity in order for us to thrive. So we wanted to say thank you.
That's really beautiful. So in terms of doing this project, what part excited you the most? Because it's a very unusual project.
Yeah, I think what excited me the most was for us to be able to showcase that if we are able to offer gratitude and appreciation and prayer and thanks and song to nature, that she will actually respond to us in a co-creative way. So the indigenous peoples of this earth, they have kept this wisdom alive since the beginning of time. We, as individuals, as humans that live in, the Northern Hemisphere, in Western territories, we've forgotten that connection. We've forgotten our indigenous ways. We've forgotten how to co-create with Mother Nature. And if we don't remember that, then we're going to continue to be in this thing that humans are calling a crisis. But maybe, just maybe, it's the greatest opportunity humanity has ever had.
Thank you, Jarvis. So, Antonique, you have performed in many different venues. You have plenty of expressions from being an artist. So, what was it like to perform for nature?
Oh my God, it was incredible. It was incredible. I felt like the birds were not only listening, but singing back to me. I had like a giant, like the world's biggest lily pad in the water behind me, the trees. I just felt really at one with nature. It was like nothing I've ever experienced before because we usually perform for people. There was no audience. It was for nature. Yeah, it was so what drew me to it is the fact that I would get to sing in the Amazon, and I had never been to South America. I'd never experienced the Amazon. So that was what really drew me to doing it in the first place. But then to be there in God's creation, which is the most beautiful art I have ever seen in my life. Trees and flowers and birds that I'd never seen before. Oh my God, it was such an experience, one that will be a highlight in my life for sure.
I can imagine.
Yes, absolutely.
Antonique, when people will get to watch this concert in a few days, here we don't have time, what do you hope they will bring with them?
Oh, first of all, I hope that they understand the connection that we should have, that we innately have with nature. We come from nature. We go back to nature when we die, and nature heals us. Doctors and scientists have said that if you spend more time in nature, that it can get you off antidepressants and all that kind of thing. Spending time with your feet in the ground, spending time talking to trees and singing, like all my singers out there, go to the park and sing to the trees. Like spend time in nature, get quiet for a minute, but then also talk to it, speak to it, communicate with it, because it's living, breathing. It's not some entity outside of us that isn't really a real living, breathing thing. It's living and breathing just like us. And it responds to us and it gives to us. It will nourish you and heal you if you go spend time in it. It'll change your life for sure.
I'm a big tree hugger myself. So whenever I sort of lose balance in life, I always go to the forest and hang out with the trees. So I know I get you. I get
absolutely.
You. So Reverend Yearwood, you are a strong advocate for culture as a driver for social change. So how was this event different from what you normally do?
Well, this event was very important. Obviously, we're here at COP30, the COP of truth, and we're at a critical moment. We are in a climate crisis, and not just humans are in a climate crisis, but nature is in a climate crisis. And so to go to the Amazon and to be there with trees that were literally 200, 300, 400 years old, and to know that those same trees were creating oxygen for my great-great-great-great-grandfather and my great-great-great-great-grandmother. And those same trees, when we are gone, would then create air for future generations. They are also saying that when they were almost in a place, they were part of the concert. They were singing, they were breathing themselves. And in many cases, they were saying, listen, because I'm rooted here, you then, because you're mobile as humans, go to that conference, go to the other side of the Amazon and advocate. Make sure you fight for us, fight for the future generations, and understand that we're not only in a climate crisis, but this concept that people must see is an example of how we are also in a crisis of imagination. And this concert helps to solve that aspect. And so that's the most powerful thing that we can do, because we are one with nature.
Yes. Amen to that, really. So Jarvis, would you please share the strongest sort of epiphany from this experience with the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, the indigenous peoples of our world are the custodians and the stewards of 85 to 90% of biodiversity on this planet. We invited the abuelos, the local abuelos from the Amazon, to come and be with us. And what I learned is that actually every single human being on this planet is indigenous to Mother Earth. The problem is we've forgotten our indigenous connection. We've forgotten those ways. So I just invite everybody to open up their hearts and try to remember how we lived with the earth before bureaucracy, religion, big business, politics, money got involved. That's what we need to remember.
Thank you, Jarvis. Santa Nick, how will this, well, maybe not, but I assume this will profoundly change how you move on further as an artist, will it?
It was very meaningful for me because Climate Revival, my organization that I co-founded with Rev, I'm CEO, we're fighting for people. And I've been, spending time in nature and advocating for nature. I have a song called Love Song to the Earth. But to be in the middle of the Amazon.
Rocket fuel, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel so much more inspired and energized and just ready to help people understand that we have to keep Mother Earth safe, because keeping her safe keeps us safe.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. So Reverend Yearwood, how are you bringing this experience into your work?
I think you will use the words of Tony K. Bambara. The role of the artist is to make the revolution irresistible. But what we saw in this concert, the role of nature is also make the revolution irresistible. Mm-hmm. We are one. We're together. And with love of nature and ourselves, we can solve this planet.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much, the two of you here in the studio, for coming to talk to us and for making this project possible, and also to be able to share it here with our audience in a few days on We Don't Have Time. Mm-hmm. And thank you so much, Jarvis, for joining us from the UK and for doing this. And I'm sure I can speak for many people watching this right now that we're so excited to finally, in a few days, be able to watch this concert here on We Don't Have Time.
It's Nick can sing. Don't miss it.
We're gonna watch the trailer. We've got a trailer for the video, which I understand.
I was just going to introduce that actually, because I'm very excited about this too. So it's a video from our dear friend Dave Boracle, who makes thoughtfully researched climate videos, and the YouTube channel Just Have a Think. And after that, we also air an interview with Stephen Moore, head of climate action at GSMA. But first, we're going to watch the teaser for the concert.
We came to the Amazon with a simple intention: to offer love back to the planet that gives us life. A concert to nature. Because when we show gratitude to the earth, she responds. This is Love Your Mother. A simple intention: to offer love back to the planet that gives us life. To understand how to do this with sincerity. Because when we show gratitude to the earth, she responds. Indigenous leaders from the Amazon and the Andes, wisdom keepers who live in continuous relationship with nature, guided us through 4 days of elemental ceremony. Air, water, fire, earth. Not as ceremonies to watch, but as ways of remembering that nature is alive and listening. And we offered music, vibration, frequency, devotion, a universal language of appreciation. Because music isn't just sound, it's emotion, it's intention. It's how we say to the planet, we feel you, we honor you, we are here. Scientists captured subtle shifts in nature's resonance during moments of song, coherence, and prayer. Early signs reflecting what we already feel in our hearts. The earth responds to love. And sometimes she responds visibly. After days of stillness, the river rose overnight, meeting our voices with her own. Wisdom, ceremony, science, and intention culminated in a concert for nature. Artists from Bolivia and around the world, not performing for applause, not singing to entertain, but offering their voices to the forests, to the river, to the sky. Nature was the co-creator, the star. More than a concert, Love Your Mother is a ceremony of gratitude, where music becomes devotion and the earth listens. Because when we show up with love, nature responds in energy, in movement, in resonance, and in the quiet, undeniable knowing that we are part of her and she is part of us. This is how we heal the world and how we heal ourselves.
I don't know if you've spotted this in your news feed at all, but there was a change of administration in the United States earlier this year. The new chap at the top seems quite keen to eradicate pretty much all the policies enacted by his predecessor to make way for his own very different and rather radical agenda. Apparently, it's causing a bit of a kerfuffle. Two of the policy portfolios being targeted most enthusiastically are the climate and environment and the green energy transition. The new administration says environmentalists are being far too alarmist about the consequences of a rapidly warming planet and that the cost of mitigating that warming is far too high, placing an unacceptable brake on economic growth. They say there's no point in America decarbonising its energy system anyway, when the two most populous countries, China and India, are still pumping out huge quantities of greenhouse gases from all their coal-fired power stations. They say we're much better off keeping our existing energy systems and deploying innovations like carbon capture and storage to keep emissions out of the atmosphere, or direct air capture to suck existing gases back out. And they say we must also now accept the warming that's coming and learn how to adapt and be more resilient to changing climatic conditions. So I've had a bit of a think about that. Hello and welcome to Just Have a Think. Those 5 objections to climate policies that I touched on just now are, according to many environmental analysts, the classic straw man arguments of the climate denial machine sponsored and supported almost entirely by the multi-billionaires who control the global fossil fuel industry. You can read about all of them in vivid detail in this superb book by Genevieve Gunter, which I've linked in the description below. But let's take a quick look at them here. The so-called climate skeptics argue that all this talk about catastrophic climate risks is just overexcited environmentalists being alarmist. There's no significant risk to human society, they tell us, and we're certainly not on track for any existential consequences like the extinction of the entire human race. So let's have a think about that. We saw in a recent video that as early as the end of 2026, the world is likely to have entered a new climate regime with global surface temperatures in the following 2 decades averaging more than 1.5 degrees higher than pre-industrial times. So that's the more ambitious target of the 2015 Paris Agreement out the window for a start. What about the slightly less ambitious target of 2 degrees Celsius? Well, according to the United Nations 2024 Emissions Gap Report, if all the nationally declared legally binding climate mitigation policies of all the nations that have signed up to the Paris Treaty were enacted perfectly, in full and to the letter, which very few of them actually are right now, but if they were, then within the average expected lifetime of a child born today, the world they inhabit will have warmed by around 3 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. Now, of course, we could make a whole video about the global effects of 3 degrees Celsius of surface temperature warming, and indeed I have done that on several occasions over the years. But let's just focus on the good old US of A, where arguably the largest contingent of anti-climate policy lobbying takes place. In her book, The Language of Climate Politics, Genevieve Gunter references data from the IPCC's 6th Climate Assessment Report, or AR6, published in 2023, and she explains that 3 degrees Celsius of global heating would likely mean that for around 3 months of the year, the entire East Coast all the way to Maine, the Midwest to the Great Plains, and half of California would be so hot that being outdoors would put you at risk of death. Southern California, the Southwest, the Deep South and Florida would be this deadly hot for nearly half the year. Now, those things might not represent species extinction level events, but they certainly sound a little bit existentially threatening to me. And we're starting to feel it even now, aren't we? In 2021, just as one example, British Columbia experienced 3 straight days with temperatures above 49 degrees Celsius or 121 degrees Fahrenheit, more than 22 degrees Celsius or 40 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than average. An event which, according to public health officials, caused almost 1,000 deaths in British Columbia. Being alarmed by the world we're currently leaving to our kids and grandkids doesn't make you an alarmist, it makes you a realist. And here's the even more alarming realisation now dawning on our climate scientists. The way our planet is responding right now, even to comparatively low levels of warming of about 1.3 degrees Celsius, appears to be corresponding with the upper end of the so-called range of uncertainty that those scientists have to apply to their data. It's not that the scientists have been wrong about their numbers. In fact, scientific predictions of planetary warming for a given level of greenhouse gas emissions have been pretty much spot on. No, it's just that the scientific community has historically been predisposed to offering the most conservative commentary possible about the consequences of those temperature increases, precisely for fear of being accused of alarmism. Well, now it looks like Mother Nature is starting to provide us with the real answers. So what about cost then? Well, this is all about estimating the financial impact of the economy of making all the changes necessary to stay within safe warming limits and setting that number against the cost to society of dealing with the consequences of not staying within those safe limits. Not just the obvious stuff like cleaning up and rebuilding critical infrastructure after extreme weather events, but also the impact of those events on things like food chain supply security, or reductions in the number of hours that manual labourers can work outside, or the cost of migration across borders and even within a nation, as we're already seeing with population movements in the United States. And then there's increased pressure on healthcare systems, not just from heat-related illnesses, but also from waterborne disease vectors that migrate from the equator towards the poles alongside warmer and wetter conditions. Not to mention regional and wider conflicts over increasingly scarce resources. I could go on, but you get the idea. The argument put forward by the climate skeptics is that the cost of rapidly transforming our energy systems, eliminating the combustion of fossil fuels, addressing the global food production system, and doing all the other stuff necessary to effectively mitigate climate change is far higher than the cost of moving much more slowly and accepting the cost of adapting to a new global climate paradigm. That argument is often based on an economic system called the Dynamic Integrated Climate Economy, or DICE, created by a Yale economist called William Nordhaus in the 1990s. That system suggested that even if the planet warmed by 3 degrees Celsius, it would only have about a 2% impact on global GDP, equivalent to just a single year of economic growth. Surely a price we could afford to pay, so the argument goes. But according to a recent publication by the UK Institute and Faculty of Actuaries, a deeper analysis of the assumptions underpinning this estimate shows that as well as excluding from analysis many of the risks now expected to occur, it also excludes 87% of the economy from the analysis, assuming that a number of sectors will be negligibly affected by climate change. The professional financial risk assessors who underwrite multi-billion-dollar insurance policies are now looking towards a much more expensive set of projected economic impacts from a range that starts at the extremely optimistic 2% GDP loss espoused by Nordhaus, and goes all the way up to as much as 25% of global GDP lost by mid-century and potentially 50% gone by 2100. So given the higher end climate responses we looked at earlier, is it really responsible to burden our kids and grandkids with such a potentially dystopian future? And by the way, the cost of mitigation right now is actually far lower than even the most optimistic analysts could have ever dreamed of back in the 90s when Nordhaus first formulated his hypothesis. Implementing renewable technologies like wind, solar and battery energy storage is in many cases the cheapest option available. So even the economics of our modern world stack up rather unfavourably against fossil fuels. A 2020 study from the Goldman School of Public Policy at UC Berkeley found that if America decarbonised its grid 90% by 2035, it would reduce the average family electricity bill by 10% and create an estimated 500,000 new jobs per year. As Genevieve Gunter explains in her book, today the fastest growing job in America is solar installer. Approximately 472,000 people work in solar and wind industries already, and the clean energy revolution is just getting started. But why bother with all this if India and China are still burning more blah blah blah? Well, first of all, what a pathetic cop-out that argument is. Are we sheep? Do we need to wait for another nation to act before we do what we know is the right thing? Is that how it works, really? Here's a useful chart. It shows the world's biggest greenhouse gas emitters, and sure enough there's China and India and the USA. But here's all the nations that each account for less than 2% of global emissions, and those representing less than 1% each. We small emitters should all just not bother anymore then, should we? And continue to be collectively the largest emitter of all? Don't be so daft. And by the way, here's another chart showing greenhouse gas emissions since the Industrial Revolution. So let's be careful who we point the finger at when we're looking for someone to blame for the current climate emergency. And on China specifically, which is the country usually singled out by Western democracies as the great Satan of our time, let's have a quick look at its coal power capacity, which seems to be the main bone of contention whenever you speak to a why should we bother kind of a person. It is true to say that following a long period of decline in that country's coal industry, suddenly in 2021, China restarted its coal capacity growth like some sort of demonically possessed fossil fuel zealot. As Genevieve Gunter highlights in her book, in that year the Chinese leadership approved coal-fired power plants equivalent to half of all new capacity across the entire globe. The following year, China issued permits that represented 6 times as much coal production as the rest of the world put together, and in just the first 3 months of 2023, the CCP permitted more new coal-fired power plants than in the whole of 2021. So what the hell was going on then? Well, basically, blind panic is what was going on. You see, in 2021 and 2022, China suffered devastating heat waves, ironically exacerbated by climate change, and it faced the stark reality that it simply did not have enough energy in those 2 summers to respond to the crisis, with hydropower drying up in the heat and unprecedented demand for air conditioning among the country's rapidly urbanising population. 2/3 of all Chinese provinces experienced power blackouts that were literally weeks long, and although no numbers have ever been published, it's highly likely that a large number of people died as a result. The grid infrastructure was not yet in place to really ramp up renewables quickly enough to respond in time, so President Xi and his colleagues had no choice but to switch on the fastest solution, which at that time was China's vast reserves of unused coal. Fast forward to 2025 though, and that grid infrastructure is now largely in place. The renewable energy transition is back on track, and the vast majority of that additional coal capacity is either running at an unprofitable 50% capacity or less, or has been completely mothballed altogether. I've made 2 or 3 videos in recent months showing how even such an appalling existential crisis as this has not deterred China from leading the way on the green transition. By 2022, the People's Republic was producing half of all the world's electric vehicles and was generating as much power just from wind and solar as the total power production of France and Germany combined. In 2023, China installed more solar panels in just 1 year than the USA has installed in its entire history. A couple of months ago, I reported that in April of this year, China installed another 45 gigawatts of solar capacity in just 1 month, compared to the 30-odd gigawatts the US installed in the entire previous year. Well, guess what? Just a month later, in May 2025, that record was smashed again when the country installed another 93 gigawatts worth. These are eye-watering numbers, and again, I could go on, but you get the idea. China is no paragon of virtue, of course. It is a ruthlessly efficient authoritarian state with a very questionable human rights record and some extremely unpalatable and opportunistic trade deals now in place to import cheap oil and gas from the likes of Russia and Saudi Arabia. But to Xi Jinping, these are nothing more than a transactional means to an end. His stated medium and long-term mission for the country is to reach peak emissions by 2030, a goal which many believe China is on track to achieve far earlier, and to reach net zero emissions by 2060 at the latest. A mission statement that, according to Genevieve Gunter, has now been integrated into every aspect of Chinese governance. In January 2021, the People's Bank of China announced that it would comprehensively factor climate change into its policy framework. These are not idle words. In Chinese culture, they actually mean something. President Xi's comprehensive National Economic and Energy Action Plan states the goal to peak carbon dioxide emissions permeates the whole process and every aspect of China's economic and social development. We will carry out initiatives to substitute renewable energy for fossil fuels, vigorously develop wind, solar, biomass, marine and geothermal energy sources, among others, and continuously increase the share of non-fossil energy in total energy consumption, prioritising local development and use of wind and solar power. By stark contrast, the United States is now very unlikely to meet its 50 to 52% emissions reduction target by 2030, given the current federal climate policy reversal under President Trump. His first action on day one was to again pull the US out of the Paris Agreement. His administration is actively dismantling key climate regulations, rescinding the EPA's 2009 endangerment finding, rolling back vehicle and power plant emissions standards and revoking methane controls, effectively crippling federal authority to enforce emissions reductions under the Clean Air Act. The Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law are facing cuts and legal challenges, undercutting the investment support that was essential to energy transition progress, so that analysts now project well over 40% of required US emissions reductions will remain unachieved by 2030, and the folks at Carbon Brief estimate that this second Trump term is on track to add an additional 7 billion tonnes of CO2 equivalent to the atmosphere by the end of this decade, compared to the continuation of Biden-era policies. And I could go on, but you get the idea, and this is already turning into an unusually long video. Read the book if you want the whole 200 pages of detail on the language of climate politics. But let's just very quickly finish off with the last two straw man arguments that I highlighted at the start. It probably won't surprise you to learn that both of them are equally spurious. Innovation is essentially just a fossil fuel industry euphemism for carbon capture and storage and carbon dioxide removal technologies like direct air capture. We might eventually need these technologies to some extent to offset the very last few percent of carbon emissions that prove to be virtually impossible to avoid, but we certainly don't need them as a get-out-of-jail-free card to enable fossil fuel producers to carry on business as usual, which is precisely their strategy and the reason why they're pushing these technologies so hard. And resilience is just another way of saying, suck it up, people. The planet is warming already, so get used to it. That sort of rhetoric seeks to absolve the organisations that are causing climate change of any responsibility for radically changing the way they behave, and it places by far the highest burden on the most vulnerable communities. Obviously, we will need adaptation strategies, but according to pretty much all the latest scientific literature, just adaptation alone will simply not be enough without aggressive emission cuts now. So the next time you're down the pub with your mates, or whatever the equivalent is in your country, and you get into a heated debate about climate, look out for these telltale straw man objections and do your best to knock them down if you can. And that was pretty much a bit of a rant, wasn't it? Not quite my normal style, but every now and then I read something that reminds me of the truly astonishing levels of BS that the fossil fuel propaganda machine has constructed over the years, and it gets me a bit wound up. So I'm off to take a couple of headache pills now and have a bit of a lie down. And that's it for this week.
So we're delighted to speak to Stephen Moore, who's head of climate action at GSMA. And we're going to talk about telecoms and climate change and lots of other things. Wonderful to connect with you, Stephen, from COP30 here in Belém, where we're broadcasting live every day. And yeah, it's quite a place to be right now, I can tell you. Let's have a bit of a chat about some new information from the telecoms industry, which seems quite exciting. You're working for GSMA, the Industry Association for the telecoms companies. Now, how is GSMA helping the telecoms industry on its path to net zero? And are you finding there's much interest for your members in taking climate action?
Yeah, it's great to be with you today and dial in from London. Sorry I can't be there actually out in Belém. And what I would love to highlight actually is the work that we've been doing with the industry supporting net zero. And we've been working with our members since 2019 when we actually set an ambition for the industry to be net zero by 2050. We created a climate action task force with our members to help deliver against this ambition. And we've really seen continued interest from our members since 2019, all the way through to the present day, despite some of the turbulence that we've seen over the previous year. Our members remain really committed to climate action, and we've seen a huge take-up of voluntary climate targets. So around 80 of our members have committed to science-based targets that are aligned to limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees. So the most ambitious aim of the Paris Climate Change Agreement. We've also worked with them on the pathway from 2020 to 2030 to be in line with that 1.5 degrees. And recently we have focused on what the transition plan is for those members. So how could they put into practice and put into reality the reductions that they'll need to achieve in order to be in line with 1.5 degrees.
Very good indeed. Sounds quite exciting. So tell us, explain what is a credible transition plan? What does that mean, and why is it important for companies to develop one?
Well, a credible transition plan really is a roadmap for how companies are going to address the transition to net zero. And this covers both the mitigation side, so how they're going to be reducing their carbon emissions, but also the adaptation side, because we know that some heating is already baked in. We're already starting to see it, and some of the extreme weather events as well. And because our members are infrastructure companies, so we have to maintain a level of service that's very much expected and needed in countries around the world. So it's both how they can reduce emissions to net zero, but then also how they can make their infrastructure resilient at the same time. And credible transition plans covers both of these elements, but also looks at other aspects that are important to delivery of these plans. So, for example, the governance that's required within an organization, how it ties in with the finances of an organization as well. And all of this is aligned to international framework. An international framework that developed actually in the UK and that we have used as the basis for the framework that we are using for our industry, for telecommunications. So I think putting all of that together means that you're able to communicate something that is credible to your stakeholders.
Good. And let's just look at this in a sense of who really benefits from this. I mean, are company transition plans mainly useful for companies themselves, or are they relevant for anyone else? I mean, governments, suppliers, investors, anyone else listening today?
Yeah, I think they're first of all very important for the company themselves. Obviously, it's not so much for them to report on, but it's more really to use them as a tool to drive change across the organization itself. So, as I say, because you're looking at different parts of the organization, it's really looking at engaging these different parts of the company so that they're all aligned to delivering against net zero, against the transition. But it's important for other stakeholders as well. So we know, especially for our industry, that a majority of the emissions for our network operators actually sits in their supply chain. So having a credible transition plan and publishing that is a very significant signal to your suppliers and your supply chain that there are some things that you'll need from them. So you'll need them, for example, to cut their emissions in order for operators to reach their own targets. What we also see is it provides assurance to investors. Investors are now increasingly savvy to climate risks and the potential impact of that on current and future balance sheets. So having a credible transition plan is communicating to your investors that you are also acknowledging these risks, but more importantly, you're taking steps to address them. We also see it being important for other stakeholders like governments. Governments have their own carbon reduction plans that they're increasingly announcing. There's a big focus on roadmaps for this COP in Belém. And these transition plans are the roadmaps for companies. So when we look at what is the likely scenarios for future carbon reductions, we can look together to bring together both where governments are going in terms of their NDCs and their carbon targets, but also trying to implement and integrate what companies are doing as well. So we've kind of got a blended view of where economies are heading. And the final thing I think it's worth pointing out is that these transition plans are really important for employees and customers as well, because we know, about 90% of the population globally wants there to be action on climate change. So it's a fantastic way to signal that action is actually taking place.
Okay, let's just wrap up with one last question. What would you like to see from COP30 this year? I don't know, personally or from a business point of view? And are you optimistic or pessimistic about what these COP processes can actually achieve?
Yeah, I think there's always a lot of noise around this time of year and a lot of concern that COP doesn't deliver because we haven't seen significant reductions, and the process is obviously now in its 30th year. But it's a multilateral process that obviously is bringing together every single country around the world to agree a huge transition. So I think there's, looking at what's been achieved since Paris over the last 10 years, it really does feel like we've turned a corner. and now there is real impetus and momentum around the net zero transition. We're seeing, the cost of renewable fuel lobby who are being increasingly under threat from the progress that we're seeing around net zero. So I think there's actually a session at COP today, particularly looking at climate misinformation. So perhaps having some more coordinated messaging on climate issues would really help this. But ultimately showcasing that action is happening, progress is being made, and that there's actually a much more positive and optimistic outlook for climate action than perhaps we read sometimes in the daily news.
Thanks very much. We're going to know, obviously, in some time, far into next week, whether we do get some progress here. But there's a lot of positivity, so we'll keep our fingers crossed. Thanks very much for being on We Don't Have Time. Best of luck with your work, and take care.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I think every single person on this planet needs to be educated and re-educated about climate change. We are dedicated as the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change to embrace this education issue.
We can look into the eyes of our children, our grandchildren, and we can finally say, tell them that we have joined hands to bequeath a more habitable world.
L'accord de Paris pour le climat est accepté.
State Congress voted to ban abortion. Alternate universe located.
Global temperatures rise.
The effects on social media on Generation Z.
To avoid catastrophe, rising sea levels, and dying coral reefs, the epicenter of a global pandemic.
No exception for rape or incest.
Diverting organic waste from landfills is a huge opportunity for climate action. We're going to talk to some guests about this and about the solutions on a national and a local level. And let's maybe introduce who we've got with us here today. We've got Mariela Pino. You're nodding your head. Are you Mariela? Okay. Waste Methane Climate Campaigner at Gaia, Latin America. We've got, if I say any of your names wrong, by the way, just interrupt, because I'm British. I ruin everybody's name. Is it Lais, Ferreira dos Santos? Not bad then. Project Officer at Polis Institute. Carolina Umenata, yeah, Program. Okay, Program Director for Waste and the Circular Economy at the Global Methane Hub. That one's easy. Kabir Aurora Yalandhari. The
last one is not important.
Okay. Kabir Aurora. Okay. Secretary General of the International Alliance of Waste Pickers, or AWP. And that's our lineup for the show. Thank you very much indeed. Mariela, you worked closely with waste picker cooperatives who are on the front lines of this issue. Can you tell us what should policymakers and the people who fund a transition in this world understand about their role, that's the waste pickers, in reducing landfill emissions?
Thank you so much for the question and the invitation. Waste pickers have been historically the heroes in waste valorization. This time it's not different. Waste produces 20% of the methane emissions worldwide, and food waste, it's mostly within being the responsible for that. Nowadays, waste pickers have the great opportunity to really also tap on that great valorization opportunity by doing door-to-door collection, going for food waste and loss avoidance. We have seen now, and we are developing business models in different parts of Latin America. We have at least 7 countries where waste pickers are already developing their infrastructure, their knowledge, and their capacity so that they are able to tackle this problem. They are at the forefront, not only in the landfills and dump sites, where historically it has been their place to work. They also are now doing door-to-door collection assets. They are doing waste valorization in composting areas, in street markets, and also bulk markets. They are key strategies that we can make to work together with municipalities, with local governments, and also with neighborhood councils. They all need support. They need to be giving the space and enable conditions so that the waste pickers can really act upon, and they can have the infrastructure, the capacity building, and the labor conditions that they need and they deserve. They have to be recognized.
So how can these methane reduction efforts be designed to improve the livelihood of the waste pickers, so we get a proper income, proper job conditions, but we get that waste, organic waste, out of the waste flow? It doesn't rot in the waste tips or the landfills. It goes back into something productive like compost, etc.
Yeah, nowadays we are going through EPR, circular economy laws and frameworks into banning organic waste going into landfills. When designing those policies, it's important not to have the waste pickers in the menu, but to have them on the table to discuss how these conditions are going to happen. They have managed in they manage, and in this case it won't be different. Waste pickers are the ones that need to...
That's okay.
Do we need to change?
Take the new microphone. Sure. Okay.
So under these new frameworks, because we have at the NDCs 3.0 this year and the declaration of 10 countries in Latin America for closing dump sites, I was saying they don't need to be in the menu for like looking for those solutions. They have to be invited to the tables to design how the infrastructure is going to involve them, also in the municipality work, so that we can make it very fast and we can actually pull the emergency brake of the climate change, you know?
Okay, great. And which country are you from, by the way?
I am in Chile.
You're from
Chile, but I work for Latin America.
Lais, yeah, you're here at COP30. That's great. I know you're here because you're sitting in the studio with me. So sometimes you read the questions, you think, I know you're here at COP30. You know why I'm asking that. There's a lot of attention being paid to Brazil and its climate initiatives. In fact, earlier today we had on the Vice Minister of the Environment, Adalberto, nice guy. And what can you tell us about waste management in Brazil? What's happening here?
Thank you for the question. Thank you for inviting me to be here. I think Brazil is in a really good direction right now. Of course, we still have a lot to do because most of the solid waste collected in the municipalities still go to landfills and dumps. But we already had like such good histories, successful cases, not only in the cities, but also some local lead solutions that it's like operated by waste pickers and communities. We had cities that had already implemented public policies, decrees, composting laws that are like have ambitious goals in diverting organic from landfills by home composting, decentralized and centralizing composting facilities. And actually here, like in Belém right now, we had implemented the first public composting center with the support of Global Methane Hub, the City Hall, and a lot of other partners. And this center is the first one in the city that it's gonna treat not only the compostable organics from COP, but also to the city. So it become a legacy, and it's completely operated by waste pickers. So yeah, I think we are in a really good way.
We Don't Have Time TV was actually in Brasilia in, I think it was March, when the UNEP hosted Climate and Clean Air Coalition was in town. We made some shows there. And we actually went to a waste center, a community-led waste center on the edges of Brasilia, and talked to some of the waste pickers who wanted to sort the organic waste, but there were kind of no incentives for doing it. And then Adalberto, if I get his name right, today said that 13 cities now have agreed to start composting, Belém included, so you mentioned that project. So things are happening. The COP's having a little influence on Brazil, yeah?
Yes, no, I think like Brazil has a huge opportunity because we have like the highest number of low-end cities in worldwide, and we actually have like national plans. Like in the beginning of the week, Adalberto and Eduardo had launched the national plan of organic for reducing and recycling organic waste.
Okay.
And yeah, I think we should stick
That's
on
good.
that.
Yeah, that's good. So I always like to hope that the COP has a catalytic effect on some of the places where it goes to, rather than just people complaining about all the emissions from aircraft of people coming. It's nice that there might be some impact in the host country, in the host state, and the host city. Kabir, you're the Secretary General of the International Alliance of Waste Pickers. More than 460,000 workers across 34 countries. That's not a small job, Kabir. What are the key needs for your organization to expand the action of organic waste management, to reduce methane, but also other benefits?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for the question. And in terms of what are the needs of waste picker organization, so if you look at majority of waste pickers when they started working, it's still largely focused on recyclable and reusable material. But there is a growing need which waste pickers across the world understand that we need to have some other opportunities, alternative livelihoods, and they also look at waste management as a place because of the expertise, because of the expertise of centuries of work in waste management, that they think that organic waste management is a natural direction to take to get better livelihoods. Now, what are the needs? So a lot of waste picker organizations that I know about, especially from India, from Latin America, and from Philippines, who are working on organic waste management. And they have very, very specific needs and challenges that need to be rectified so that we can have better systems. And what are those needs? Let me highlight. One of the things that we definitely need in place is the stability of waste collection contracts. That if you bring in waste collection contracts over a period of time, say for 5 years or 10 years, that's when organic waste management works better. The second thing which we need to do is that organic waste management will not work better until and unless you have some municipal norms in place for separation or segregation at source, so that the households segregate the organic waste, recyclable materials, and then domestic hazardous waste in 2-3 categories, so that waste pickers can collect separated waste. Otherwise, it's undignified to put our hands into the waste to separate organic and the plastic, and it's not justified for us to do it. And so it's a moral question to us that the society needs to do segregation of waste at home. And the other thing is it reduces the contamination of waste. Otherwise, what will happen if you don't separate? You will have microplastics, you will have some of the metal content if it's mixed up with the organic waste. So we need to have stronger laws at municipal levels which are forcing households, and the households which are not segregating, penalizing them for not segregating. So we have to ensure that the segregation of waste happens. The other thing which we need is the investments in the sector in organic waste. Right now, what we see is that we have a huge subsidy across Global South to petrochemical industry to make fertilizers. But such a provision does not exist, say, for composting and manure facilities. So what we need is a complete rethinking, 180-degree shift in how we think about agriculture itself and where this organic waste compost can go and feed the systems. I believe Sri Lanka has already started thinking about it in that direction. And then you have, then what we need is some level of service fees. So organic waste generally is looked at, oh, you should generate revenue out of just selling compost. It doesn't work. The way economies are, it will not work until and unless we get a service fees of organic waste management from the municipalities. and at the same time have some restructuring of the fertilizer market to get manure and organic compost popular so that we can have better pricing, some level of pricing, and connections with the cooperatives of farmers, small producers who can buy these materials, and public contracts from the municipalities. Everywhere in the world, municipalities manage huge gardens and parks. These are the places where we can use the compost produced by waste picker organizations. And of course, skill building and training in how to do composting and how to test out the composting quality. I can give you an example from the place where I come from in India. In Shillong, which is a city, beautiful city in northeast of India, the municipality worked with waste pickers, a self-help group of waste pickers, and it set up a permanent contract where governor's house buys compost from the waste pickers cooperative. That stabilized the contract, that ensured that there is regular income, and municipality pays some amount to the waste pickers for organic waste management. So we have systems and models in place, and we need to scale them up with these by satisfying these needs in place. Thank you.
Right, it was a long description, but I think it's worth having, isn't it? Because it's one thing to say we're going to do this, but if you don't have all these other things in place, it's a waste of time, isn't it? It's a waste of time for the waste pickers. It's a waste of time for climate action, you know. Let's come to our last guest, and we'll have a bit of a chat. Carolina, landfill methane seems like it would be among the easiest emissions to cut. Yet progress remains slow. I think we now heard some of the reasons why. From your perspective, what is holding us back, and what could unlock faster action?
Yeah, thank you for the question and the invitation. And I think what is important to understand is that Paris Agreement is great as a framework, but after 10 years, we need to talk about implementation. And that is exactly what methane is helping us to do, to bring the attention to the waste sector and why waste is responsible of 20% of the methane emissions, and landfills are hotspot of that emissions. And we can detect that emissions from remote sense data. So we don't need to wait for inventories or anything else. We can see that emissions and from satellites and other technologies. And what is interesting is that we can work on improve the operation of the landfills. That is not enough, though, because organic waste decays very quickly in the landfills, right? So we have the problem there, we need to solve the problem there, but we also need to work on prevention and recovery, as we were talking, right? And why? Because we can improve the health of our soils, and also generate incomes to our communities, families, and generating jobs, which is exactly what we are talking about at this COP as just transition.
The Global Methane Hub, I mean, you're working with partners around the world on methane commitments, and there's a lot of pledges been going on about methane, not just in terms of waste, but across the whole sectors. Can you share an example of where landfill methane reduction is actually already in action?
Yeah, as we were talking, right, we need to mobilize finance, and that's not impossible. I am from Chile, so I'm going to share an example.
We've got two Chileans then. We've got two Chileans.
Because this is a Latin American COP, right?
I knew about gender balance, but I didn't realize, I thought we had to get country balance as well here, right? So,
No, but it's because we're working a lot from Latin America, right? And we do have an example. We have a domestic compensation system that last year helped us to reduce 4.4 million tons of CO2 equivalent. And more than 60% of that reduction came from landfills because they were capturing the biogas and generating electricity. That type of actions and systems is what we need to mobilize the action, because we need to support the OPEX, the operation expenditures of the waste sector. We are working on shifting the finance from incineration and landfills to organic waste segregation, food banks, etc. But we also need to work on instruments to support the cost of operation that is mainly led by the municipalities and the waste pickers, as we were hearing.
So this is a very fascinating story, because I think we all I mean, certainly after going to see the waste pickers in Brasilia or near Brasilia, you know, I suddenly realized what a challenge they were facing. And we also, you know, can multiply this challenge across large parts of the developing world. There are still challenges, by the way, in the developed world where maybe what's happened there is there's been more a kind of movement towards, in some countries, the waste, the organic waste going into the landfills and then tapping the landfill for methane, for energy. That's kind of okay, but the problem with that one is there's still a lot of methane coming out of those landfills into the atmosphere. So clearly, as you're all saying, the best policy is to separate that stuff at source and then use it for composting and things rather than letting it get into the landfill in the first place. I suppose the question is, when it comes to the finance, who is going to pay for this? Is it the municipality? In some countries, the municipality is not the main, you might say, boss of this thing. It can be a private company, can't it? A private waste management company can be the partner that one has to work with. There must be different challenges in terms of who pays for this in different countries. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, who wants to have a go?
Okay, I can answer that one. Say, first of all, municipalities also have limited budgets, so the money has to come from the user fees. Households have to pay the money to the municipality for the waste management. That money then comes to the municipality, then gets distributed in waste management facilities, operations of the waste management facilities. So those are the places first to look at. Second factor of money can come in. We have a lot of subsidies for fossil fuel-based fertilizers. Those subsidies need to be directed towards composting. And the third money has to come from the consumers themselves. So people who are consuming compost, whom we are selling. So municipalities have a mandate to maintain parks. So they have to pay us for that, for those services. So these are the three places where revenue generation can happen. Okay. And I'll pass it on to Felin.
Just complement one thing. The discussion about the fee that we pay, right? In general, in the Global South, we don't pay enough. And most of the families, we don't pay, right? It's really difficult because it's also a political issue, right? You need to go to the Congress to change that. And who is going to do that? Who is going to say to their voters that they need to pay more? It's very difficult. So I think it is a good discussion for sure, but also we need to review how we are expending the money on waste from municipal budgets. Because what's going on now is that waste is being transported kilometers and kilometers because of the solutions that we have implemented, that are landfills that are centralized and are not doing what we need to do, right? So also talking and discussing with the municipalities on how to make their budget expenditures more efficient on decentralized solutions is a great opportunity. So I have to say that I think that's also the
Okay, I think what I'm getting here right now is that there are hidden costs in the traditional, conventional, the way we normally handle waste these days. There are costs which are kind of hidden because they're in the trucking of large quantities of waste from one place to another or something. Whereas if you have a local solution, you're actually saving. So even the households think, oh, we're paying a bit. Actually, they may be paying a lot less than really is going on at the moment because there are other hidden costs that nobody's seeing, right? Sorry, yeah.
No, I just want to add that what Carolina brings to the table, because we already have, like in Brazil, a lot of decentralized experience that it's like really good, and it has a huge taxes and like good proportions of diverting organic waste from landfills. And maybe this is like a good opportunity for us right now because we have like landfills and dumps having kilometers so we waste money with transport, with people, and some private options that don't actually work. But if we invest more in people, invest more in these local-led solutions, it's possible.
Yeah. I would like to add also what we have seen a lot in Latin America. It's that it's not a proper segregation of domestic production and also like bigger producers. And often bigger producers are not paying what they have to pay. I'm speaking about shopping centers, or like hotels or whatever. And of course, there are things that municipalities have to check for, and that would help, of course, to raise the amount of money that municipalities would count on. And in general, nonetheless, the current contracts that usually municipalities have with big companies, big corporations that are landfilling waste, it's for companies that they don't mind, actually, as you said, to put organic waste into the landfill, but that nutritious and organic matter are forever, and you won't be using it into agriculture, nothing like that. But on the other hand, as we have been saying, decentralized solutions organized by waste pickers are much cheaper and usually low carbon, because they use technology, definitely, of course, but at decentralized levels, you don't have to travel so far away. You don't need to use big machines or like a lot of energy. You know, like there are many processes that just happen simply, or can even actually offer, in a way, energy or some other byproducts like anaerobic digestion, like black soldier fly, that so you can create incomes, you know, so you can give also livelihoods for waste pickers when managing organic waste.
I think you raised an interesting point about the fertilizer issue. I mean, we know that that's coming from, you know, oil and gas production, then being turned into fertilizer. The whole fossil fuel subsidy story leaks into the fertilizer story. Most people seem to be finding that regenerative agriculture is unbelievably good if you can just be a bit patient in the first 5 or 6 years, yeah? Whilst the soil starts recovering. So I can see that there has to be some links made in this whole story to things like regenerative agriculture, so that then the composting can go directly there. And as you say, municipalities or governments and farmers save money because they're not using as much fertilizer in the first place. So these are all very interconnected, aren't they? What about how do we train households to separate? I mean, this is even in Europe, right? There are still people tossing plastic bags into the organic waste stream, or is it a cultural thing? Do people have to learn it, or do they intrinsically feel the understanding that you can, you know, recycle organic material, or is it something that's been lost through generations, or how do we deal with that?
Yeah, may I? I think we have been lost into this black bag filled with everything mixed culture. We have to go back. We don't have to lose our north and to get connected to earth, to understand that organic waste needs to go back to soils. You know, it needs to be in the circle of the earth, the natural work, how it works. We have been seeing in Latin America amazing work with schools and educational projects where you teach children in the school to segregate organic waste and actually compost and actually produce some of the food in the schools. And this is so interesting and relevant. Like where I live in the outskirts of Santiago, the capital, we have seen amazing results because the municipality actually connected the door-to-door collection with the houses of those children, you know, of those schools where they are implementing and going innovative into those educational purposes hands-on. And this is marvelous. We have been seeing now an amount of organic waste that it's now being thought of as an anaerobic digestion solution because you already have a big amount. And this is going to provide a lot of solutions also for the local areas where they have or small family farming, small producers, and that they actually need the compost for their production. We are planning actually also in Central America to link agroecology networks that already are into this kind of regenerative production to link them with municipal solid waste so that you already have the demand of compost for the soils.
I like the idea of the municipality becoming the kind of the pull, you know, that they are going to take this stuff and they are going to use it. And that means that they have to also educate their population in the city. Do you know what I mean? Because, I mean, the municipality can get to every citizen through libraries, through stuff in the door every day, and just reminding them. I like that too. But, sorry, we're running out of time. We could go on for a long time. It's a really good subject, by the way. It's really good. There's so many of you, though. We're running out of time. What about the COP, right? So I heard, you know, today that in Brazil, 13 cities have now signed up to start composting big time and separating the organic waste. What else can the other governments do at this COP? Briefly, one by one, let's go along the line.
I think a huge opportunity because of the forestry discussion and deforestation is how to link the agendas. We have that opportunity because the waste sector is kind of this like climate emergency break, but we need to work on the demand of the sub-products like the compost and digestate and other things. And there has been a lot of pledge on forest, right, and mobilizing finance. We need to link that opportunity. Brazil is leading by the example, but we need more. So we are keeping a like strong look on that to support the agenda.
So I will say from the point of view of many of our countries are also severely, when it comes to waste, it's mismanaged and it's also contributing. So one way is that if we invest in organic waste management and some of these facilities, we clean up our own mess. And at the same time, a lot of plastic pollution that we see out there is also because of the contamination. Plastics can't be recycled, metal can't be recycled if they are mixed up. So if you have separation at source, and some of the NDCs do mention waste management as a priority for a lot of our countries. So now we are looking at a possibility of investments in that domain. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the key is basically like still including the waste pickers, the communities, and all of these different actors in the solutions, because we have like already the solution in our hands. So maybe invest on that and rethink the financial flows.
Yeah, adding to all what we have said, for the implementation and for having society actually to act upon and to segregate waste at source, we need the infrastructure. So to implement, we need money to run into not anymore end-of-the-pipe solutions, but rather these solutions that bring positive impacts into society. And as with traffic lights, we need to educate society. They know how to use a traffic light, but the traffic light needs to be there. So we need actually to have around decentralized solutions for valorization of organic waste.
It seems to me that everyone recognizes methane is one of the best possibilities we have to slow global warming, at least over the short term. And I think because of that methane necessity by all nations realizing it's the emergency brake, it suddenly brings into sharp focus the potential of separating organic waste from landfills and the story of the waste pickers. So I think this is a very special moment that could be very special if everyone can get it right. So well done for being here. It's a good moment, and thanks a lot for being on We Don't Have Time TV. Okay.
Thank you.
We are back. The Youth for Climate Action team is back again at COP with a delegation of 7 young students, and we will share our experience, our thoughts, and our perspectives with you guys every day. So, Julian, you've been to 2 previous COPs, COP28 in Dubai and COP29 in Baku. What makes this COP special? What makes this COP stand out from your other COP experiences?
So by comparing the last 2 COPs with this COP, I would say personally that we as Youth for Climate Action delegation saw that at COP28 there were not so many youth representatives. And here at COP29 there were a bit more. And here at COP30 there's way more youth representatives than in the last. The most important is that the youth is not just present, but the representatives of the countries, they also listen to the youth and take action based on what the youth says. Another big difference is that here in the Amazonia region, we have a lot of indigenous people, which is very important because the indigenous people, they have experience. They have a community that fights together against climate change. And we all need to take a look at them and take action based on what they also say.
As Julian already mentioned, yesterday morning we came across peaceful demonstrations by indigenous people which temporarily blocked entrance gates. How did you experience these demonstrations, and how did you come to understand these from your perspective?
Well, at first it came as a shocker because you're seeing these people in real life. It's not on a news feed, it's not in an article, it's not on TV, it's right in front of you. They're speaking out their voices and making their opinions heard. And even though what they say may not be what the government wants to do, neither what the government tells them to, they speak out their truth. They stand up for what they believe in. And that made me, quite frankly, feel privileged because we're in a world where we can do that, where we can speak out and we can really share our opinion without having to worry about the consequences. We might end up in prison or worse, be persecuted or murdered. And then to the second question, as to what my personal experience told me about this. Well, as a Brazilian myself living in Luxembourg, it made me realize that everyone has their own identity that they need to, first of all, make themselves heard of. Meaning that they need to stand up for what they believe in and really shout. Well, quite frankly, not figuratively, but really shout and make their voices stand out that you're being heard. Because once you're heard, you can truly know that you can have a dialogue. Otherwise, it's just a one-sided one, where one person just tells you and the other one just nods. And that's not how you do cooperation. And that's back tying into the COP30, especially with the youth now. We don't just want to be being told what we want to do, but really have a dialogue, really have communication for a future that we both construct, not just one side commands.
As you may already know, our delegation's mission is to amplify youth voices in global climate discussions. So Leonor, as a young person, what were your first impressions of yesterday?
Yesterday, being at COP again gave me a completely different feeling than last year. Last year, it was very difficult for me to communicate with people because people weren't so often than this year. Here at COP30, people are more connected and more welcome, and that gave me a better feeling. This last year and this COP, we can see a lot of youth delegates. And what I really like that this COP in the indigenous people, we can see a lot of youth, and that gave me a good hope feeling. So basically, seeing a lot of indigenous people so active and so passionate about their own culture touched me a lot. And also, we are not the only one who cares about the environment. It's very important. So it's very important to see that other youth are here, but for me we still need more Jugend here, because it's not only because we are the next generation, but also because our voices matter.
So I'm here with Leandro Yasioca. He's CEO and Head of Business Area Latin America of Electrolux Group. So Leandro, it's really a big challenge in terms of home appliances here in Brazil. So I understand there's lots that you can do. I mean, you're a global manufacturer, Electrolux Group of home appliances. So your devices are really used all over the world, but there is a special sort of circumstances or needs here in Brazil. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the challenges are the same all over the world, but here in Brazil and Latin America particularly, when it comes to infrastructure, especially on the circular economy, reverse logistics, this kind of initiative, it still requires a lot of investments and a lot of foundations that needs to be built in partnership between the private sector and the public sector. So Electrolux is involved in this process and taking the leadership as well in helping the region to develop and to build this foundation and infrastructure so that we can apply the sustainability concepts even more here in the region.
Because one way of reducing the carbon footprint of appliances is, of course, looking into circularity, just like you said. So, and also make sure that the appliances can be repaired rather than replaced. So, how are you addressing this topic here in Brazil?
Yeah. Durability and repairability for Electrolux worldwide, it's non-negotiable. We really take that very seriously since the beginning of the development process of our products, but also along the consumer journey. So when the consumer is using the product and even after use as well, we take care of that. So for us, this is very important. We have been working diligently to extend the life of our products, but also to make it simpler and easier to repair when it is needed. So this is something we have been working with our partners, because of course it requires a lot of work, collaboration with suppliers, ourselves, but also especially a lot of technicians that are out there in the market helping consumers. So they need to understand that they need as well to buy the concept and they get support from Electrolux to do that as their best.
This is really great work you're doing, and I'm curious, when it comes to laws, So how many countries in Latin America have lost on this, what we just spoke of, extended producer responsibility?
Yeah.
What is the case here?
Yeah, in Latin America today, the laws and legislations are more based on making sure that consumers, they can repair their products. So we as manufacturers, we are responsible for the entire life of the product during the consumer utilization of the goods. And in terms of repairability, is still initial discussion. So I think Latin America is a little bit behind in that sense, but I'm sure it's going to be very quick to catch up because this is a very important topic everywhere.
So is this something that the Electrolux group is pushing for?
Yeah, that is something that is already a reality for Electrolux. So in the group, we are always taking the lead in developing these more sustainable practices. And you take, for example, Europe, where you have already a legislation that is very dedicated to repairability. So we are really working very hard to comply to it and to lead in a lot of aspects.
So during Climate Week in New York this September, we talked to Tara Helms. She's your Director of Sustainability North America of the Electrolux Group. And she told us about the new goal of having 35% recycled steel and plastics in your products by 2030. This is really amazing. So how does this goal impact your work here in Latin America?
Yeah, that is a very important objective that we set for ourselves. Very ambitious, very ambitious. We said, look, we need to lead, we need to be in the leading position. So 35% of recycled plastics and steel, it is definitely an ambitious target. And here in Latin America, as we said in the beginning, we still need to do a lot of foundation work, especially with suppliers, developing the capabilities of suppliers to deliver this type of material. So materials that are recycled both on steel and plastic. So there is a lot of cooperation with our suppliers to increase their capabilities so that we can use more and more and get access more and more to materials, of course, with the right level of recyclability, but also with the right level of cost and quality for the consumer. So we take care of both, and we are developing that in Latin America in collaboration with our suppliers.
Impressive work indeed, Leandro. So you're doing all these things to, of course, to reduce the emissions of your products and your production. But for products like fridges, stoves, and also dishwashers, most of the footprint really comes from when they're used. So how do you do about this? Do you educate your customers?
Yeah, so indeed 85% of the emission is coming from the usage of the product. So this is a very important stage for us. And we take a lot of actions within the frame of our global product that is called For the Better, where one of the pillars of this program is called Better Solutions and Better Living. A third one is called Better Company. But the Better Solutions and the Better Living, it's basically they bring to consumers solutions that help to reduce the footprint along the usage. For example, more efficient refrigerators in terms of energy consumption. We are always working to deliver more efficient products, right? Utilization of water in our dishwashers as well and washing machines, so reducing that. So this is coming all together. And within the Better Living, we are always educating, sharing information, and trying to nudge consumers to take habits that are more sustainable in their daily lives. So with this combination, we have been for sure successful in trying to help consumers that are willing to have sustainable, more sustainable lives. Consumers are telling us that they want to be more sustainable. And then we have to help with solutions like this.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Leandro. This was very inspiring to hear what you're doing at Electrolux. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm here with Camila Jordan, and you are urban activist and director at Tito Brazil. Yes. Great to talk to you tonight, Camila.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Camila, in terms of the transformation of the construction industry, why is it urgent, and how would you like to see it become more sustainable?
Well, I think I'd like to start by saying that today we have 2 billion people living in informal settlements, and they are living in usually precarious housing with not enough infrastructure, water, sanitation, etc. So we really need a transformation, because if we don't include these people now who are already suffering at the forefront of climate change, the time will be lost. because the projections for people living in informal settlements until 2050 is for this number to go up to 3 billion people. How can we as a society, not only in terms of our conscience, but in terms of our economies, of everything that we need to be doing in terms of climate change, can think of having 3 billion people living in not safe conditions, with not enough dignity to be part of our societies? So sustainable construction needs to go beyond just thinking about materials. It needs to go into also this place of radical inclusion. We need to be bold and we need to be courageous to take these steps of including people who now have been excluded for decades.
Thank you very much, Camilla. And also in light of climate change, we're going to have more people more vulnerable, right?
Exactly. So what we are seeing through our work every day now is how these emergencies, who used to be like once or twice a year, have been being constant in Latin America. So we've been seeing how every month we're having multiple crises in multiple cities, in multiple places. And so it's very urgent, because also the time of reconstruction, the time of being able to rebuild is very long for people who are already living in precarious conditions. So we really need to take bold moves so that we include these people in everything that, when we're thinking about sustainable construction, when we're thinking about the future of our cities, we can't leave these people behind. They already are behind. We need to change the way we think about our cities, and especially how we really think about including everyone in what needs to be done.
Thank you, Camilla. So the Saint-Gobain action paper, you've read it, I'm sure, at least the summary, maybe all of it. So what is your take on the priorities here? What really resonates with you in this action paper, and what would you like to highlight to move forward?
I think all of the 6 main topics are very relevant, very pertinent to this whole discussion, especially here in Belém, in Brazil, in COP, in the Amazon. We really need to, and I think the point that resonated the most with me was the part of inclusion, not only thinking about the material side, the technological part, but really the part about culture, about society, about how we need to go really collaborate to think about new solutions. Because if we also think about how things have been done, if we keep doing the same mistakes, we will go towards 3 billion people living in informal settlements. But so I think the paper is really interesting, because we need to also, if the private sector also doesn't come on board, if it's only a problem of governments, if it's only a problem of social movements, then we won't find a solution. We really need to work together. And I think the paper already brings that, already brings the spirit of collaboration, brings this idea that we have to step out of our boxes. We need to step out of our silos and really collaborate, listen to each other from also a really an equal standpoint. You know, everyone has something to offer. Everyone has something that we can learn from each other. And especially the communities who are already living in those situations. Because with TETO, we've been mapping and working together and building solutions and learning with the communities for almost 30 years in Latin America. And what we know now, and we've been known actually, is that the communities already have so many solutions, because they're already operating and living in conditions where they need to innovate every day. Every day they need to think about solutions that fit into their pockets, that fit into their realities, and usually we don't listen to them. We don't take the time to really listen to what they're saying to us, to the rest of our society. Governments don't take the time. So we actually, if we learn from them, if we take this moment to come together and everyone listening to each other, not just talking, we're just talking at each other, which is usually what happens, I think we have really a chance to change what's coming next.
So Camilla, you were at the COP. We are at the COP here, and today the action paper was launched at the COP. So what are your hopes from the COP perspective related to construction and sustainable cities?
I think really this paper in this moment is actually something very innovative, because we're not seeing a lot of discussions when it comes to including housing into the climate discussion. It's very incipient, very incipient. And so we really need to push this agenda. We actually also launched a letter with other organizations during COP, really a call to action as to how housing has to be at the forefront also of the discussion about climate, because how will you survive anything How will you be resilient if you're living in a dirt floor, if your house can fall with any rain, if you don't sleep at night because you don't know if your house will stand after, you know, a rain at night. So I think this moment is really interesting in terms of bringing this discussion into COP. I would really like if this would be a part of the formal and the official events and not just a side event, because this is really what we also need to be discussing with the state governments, with the negotiators. It really has to be fit into the plans, and that is something we're not seeing yet. So I think this side event, bringing so many different actors together tonight, is really a really bold move, and we were happy to be here and be a part of it.
Thank you very much for your passion and for the work you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have another wonderful guest with us here at COP30 in Belém in Brazil. It's the mayor of Malmö, Sweden, and also the president of ICLI, which is Local Governments for Sustainability. I want you to give us your name because I'm very bad as a Brit of, well, mangling wonderful Swedish names.
Okay, my name is Katrin Stjernfeldt-Jammeh, and I'm the mayor of Malmö.
Absolutely fantastic. So 400,000 citizens in your city, recently ranked as the most sustainable city in Sweden. So I suppose we're curious, and the audience out there, all around the world, are curious to know, yeah, how are you handling this? How are you getting on this journey to net zero?
Actually, we started out very early, already early 90s, because due to the industrial crisis, and we actually had to do something differently. And at that time, we decided to develop the city with a strong focus on green transition to create new green jobs. So that was, I would say, part of the beginning. And then we have been focusing on city development with like the green infrastructure in place from the very beginning when we developed new city districts. So heating, cooling, energy solutions, mobility solutions, waste management, for example. So that's the main infrastructure. And then are we also teaming up together with the business sectors, different organizations, with citizens, and with the businesses in Malmö and different organizations. We sign different kinds of climate contracts to make sure that it's not just the municipality itself that try to reach the goals, but also the business sector and everyone actually in our territory.
Is Malmö a growing city? We mentioned 400,000 citizens. I have no idea how many citizens were. Yeah, almost 400,000. And I don't know what it was like, 10 or even 20 years ago, but is it a growing city, and therefore is that a challenge to your ambition, or is that an opportunity?
I would say both. When I first came in office, 2013, since then, I think we grew by 50,000 inhabitants. And since we developed new city district, I would say it's easier to do the right things from the very beginning. It's harder to find the solutions for already existing city parts and do it in a sustainable and affordable way. And well, if it's not affordable for the citizens, it's not sustainable. So I think that's the main challenge, to make sure that you work with the whole city, all already existing areas and new ones.
I mean, I suppose, a city is part of a country, and I suppose there is a relationship between, Malmö, cities around Malmö, and also with the national government. Is that very important to have a good relationship with the national government? Is it important for the cities of a country like Sweden, or any country really? How does that work, in terms of finance and to be able to do these green activities that you're doing?
Well, I would say it's really important. Cities all over the world do take bold action, do deliver, with sometimes government that actually support them, sometimes without that support from national governments, but they do deliver to make a better living for the citizens, to make them more secure, and also secure the planet. But of course, it's much more easy if you have the support from your government. If your government or the national level do make their NDCs, their climate goals,
National climate plans, yeah.
in collaboration with the level which works closest to the citizens. So if you have national goals that fits to what's happening on the ground, then it's much easier to deliver. And if you have a government that take decisions that actually are increasing the emissions within the country, then you have a problem if you would like to be in the forefront. In the case of Malmö now, we are facing a situation where the emissions from Sweden actually were rising. But we struggled to push back, and I think the emission raised by 7% in Sweden last year, but in Malmö with 1%. And since we have an ambition to lower our emissions quite severe, that's a problem for us, even though we managed to push most of it away.
How, and what, do you know what area the emissions went up in, or what was the change that led to that?
That was due to decisions about fuel and
Was it transport?
Yes. So, and that's where we are investing heavily right now, and I would say that's why we managed anyway. Because we are investing heavily in our transportation system to create new bus lanes, support public transportation. We are building new bike lanes, making it easier for pedestrians and so on. So I think we try to change the patterns of mobility. And I think that's one of the most important things. We have to keep on investing, because that's a main part of our emissions.
We're running a series right now with the Global Covenant of Mayors and also the European Commission on energy efficiency in cities, and also we have a lot of shows with Alfa Laval, of course, a great Swedish company on energy efficiency. It seems energy efficiency has become like the flavor of the month in literally not the last month, but in the last couple of years, because I suppose it's a way of saying, well, actually, if you're energy efficient, you're saving energy, you don't need to worry about the grid so much, in the country, or, if you're a bit behind on your renewable energy targets, it's a way of buying time to allow renewable energy also to increase. So energy efficiency, district heating, all these things, you have these in Malmö, don't you? And energy efficiency is something at the heart of your targets.
Yes, it is. And if we talk about district heating, we started to develop it already 1950s or so. So it's like 70 years ago. And now I think 90% of all our households are having access to the district heating. And today I think 98% runs from fossil renewable or recycled fuel.
That's amazing, and I think it's a good story in Scandinavia. I think other countries are starting to catch up with this. I just had somebody on the show that was proud that some German city now had district heating, but you had yours in the 1950s, so they need to catch up a bit. Tell me about what it's like being president of ICLEI, and what is the challenges of that, and but also what is in a sense, the pride of actually doing this job.
I think first of all, ICLEI is a network connecting 2,500 or a little bit more cities, towns, regions globally, all with a strong focus on sustainability. So we help cities to connect and share experiences, best practices, but we also work to fund and be co-partners for different important projects at the local level. We set up training programs for civil servants in municipalities all over. So we work in different ways to support, and that's something cities, regions ask for. And then we have a main task, or I think an important task, also to be a strong voice to advocate for the nations and global actors to adore the importance of taking action locally and how to collaborate between the national level and the local level. And this year here at the COP30, we are really working hard to make sure that the Belém legacy is a stronger outcome for cities. So we are able to make a stronger impact, and so we have the support to deliver. So I think it's a great opportunity to reach out, and also a great opportunity to try to deliver globally, but also to make it better locally, to protect your citizens and to protect the planet. That's a good combination.
I remember at COP28 in Dubai that Mike Watts of C40 and Gino von Ickley came to We Don't Have Time and said the government's going to cut us out of the final outcome deal, you know, because every city has been pushing for some time to be a part of the writing of the National Climate Plan, the NDC. And so that was very nice. They came to us, they brought 2 mayors with them, and we did a show how this would be a disgrace if it happened. If it happened, they were cut out of the deal. Then they weren't cut out of the deal. So I'm sure it wasn't just being on We Don't Have Time, but maybe it helped a little bit. But I understand here as well, this is an important COP. I'm just asking you, that's why some mayors are here, right? I mean, you were in Rio, and but now there are still mayors here because you don't want to be left out of the final deal.
No, actually, we are working in Dubai. We have this SHAMP initiative, which it's an initiative to make nations collaborate with the local level when they work with the NDCs. Yeah. So that's really one important step. Here we are asking to be recognized and to have a standing mechanism and a standing dialogue, so we make sure that the COPs ahead includes the city level more permanently. So that's one of our main tasks for now. And just before the COP here in Belém, we had the local leaders summit in Rio, supported by the COP presidency and Bloomberg Philanthropies. And that was a strong gathering, and we together gave a strong statement that we had the possibility to deliver to the Secretary General of the UN when we arrived here. And then we have had several meetings during the year with the Brazilian government, and especially the Minister of Cities. And I feel a strong support from the UN system, but also from the Brazilian government and lots of nations that actually already endorsed the SHAMP coalition, the SHAMP initiative. So I'm hopeful, but I really think it's necessary to support cities. That's the only way to make sure that we are able to deliver.
Well, thank you very much for that. And we, as We Don't Have Time, will follow the negotiations towards the end. We hope that we can say something very positive about what you just said at the end to our viewer. Yeah. And so thank you very much for being with us on We Don't Have Time. And it's a real pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
I think every single person on this planet needs to be educated and re-educated about climate change. We are dedicated as the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change to embrace this education issue.
We can look into the eyes of our children, our grandchildren, and we can finally say, tell them that we have joined hands to bequeath a more habitable world.
L'accord de Paris pour le climat est accepté.
Yesterday, Congress voted to ban abortion. Located.
Global temperatures rise.
The effects on social media on Generation Z.
To avoid catastrophe, rising sea levels, and dying coral reefs, the epicenter of a global pandemic.
No exception for rape or incest.
Welcome to our daily press briefing from our dear friends at the Planetary Science Pavilion. And I'm joined here by Marina Hiroto. You are Associate Professor, Department of Physics, Federal University of Santa Catarina. Wonderful to have you here. And I think and hope we will be joined by President Santos any minute. And we're going to talk about, of course, the Amazon and other aspects of what you're doing here at the COP. So, from your perspective, why is the Amazon so indispensable to the region's people and ecosystems and to the stability and also actually the well-being of the entire planet?
Hi, Katarina. Thanks for having me here today.
Pleasure.
Regarding your question, I think it's important to highlight three main aspects of the Amazon. First, the peoples living in the Amazon. So what they say is that they are the forest and the forests are them. So in this sense, it's really vital to keep the forest, to keep this biocultural diversity. So all of the humans living within the Amazon, they really live in consonance with the forest and it's their home, right? So I think to conserve, to preserve all this rich culture is really important. The second level of importance relies on the continental importance of the Amazon, thinking about security, the water security, food security, social security, in general, the services provided by the Amazon to the entire continent. And third and last, I think in terms of the planetary stability, how the Amazon provides energy, moisture for the whole planet to really be stabilized in a more human inhabitable state. So this is like different levels of importance.
Thank you very much, Marina. So we are joined by President Santos.
Hi, President.
Wonderful to have you with us here on our broadcast. And you are Planetary Guardian, you are Chair of the Elders, you are the former President of Colombia and also a Nobel Peace Prize winner. So we are very honored, of course, to have you join us in the studio.
I'm the one who's honored, and it's a great pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. So I just asked Marina here about the significance of the Amazon, the different aspects of why it's so crucial to protect this ecosystem. So I'd like for you to share your thoughts on this.
Well, I think that all the world is now aware that the Amazon is one of the lungs of the world, and without this lung, the world will not survive. The importance of the Amazon at this crucial moment is even higher, larger than traditionally, precisely because the different indicators, the planetary guardians have a set of borders, frontiers where we should not go beyond, and unfortunately we've gone beyond in 7 of 9, which in a way makes the preservation of what we need to preserve more important, and the Amazon is right there also because we are approaching a tipping point. All the scientists and all the people who have studied the Amazon are very worried that if we continue degrading the forest and the Amazon, then this will become a savanna in the not very distant future. So it's so important, of course, from the point of view of the source of water. There's a very long list of contributions of the Amazon to humanity, and a very long list of problems that we would have if we don't take care of the Amazon. That's why I think that the objective of this COP and President Lula's initiative to save the Amazon is so important and so relevant at this particular time.
Thank you very much indeed, President Santos. And turning now to Marina, you often refer to the Amazon as, in plural, Amazon forests. So could you please elaborate a bit on this?
Yeah, I think for me, the Amazon as a system is composed by different Amazons inside because of the peoples, because of the ecosystems, because of the conditions that shaped the forests the way they are today. So normally I make an analogy with the human body, because it's like a livable entity, as it is the Amazon. It's dynamic, it's complex. So imagine that your entire body is composed only by one organ, right? If you think about the Amazon and the different organs of your body, you can think about your liver, your stomach. So they have different functions. They work in synchrony to have one function, but they are different entities living with different functions and providing different services that complement each other and remain stable for a more stable planet. So it's more like a composition of different Amazonias that make up one Amazonia for a livable planet.
That's really a beautiful way of explaining it, and it becomes very clear. Yeah. When you say it like that.
Yeah, because I think when you think about the Amazon, some people have this idea of a green carpet and only one type of forest, right? But then when you go on the and walk along the understory, it's more like so different from one place from the other, and then you bump into different trees, different animals, different peoples. So I think it's really very rich. So to really retain Amazon forest for me is too singular to, it doesn't reflect the uniqueness of the forest, but it's a contradictory because it's unique at the same time that it's composed by so many different entities.
But I add something here?
Please do.
Which I think Marina's approach is correct, but also and they're not mutually exclusive. They complement each other. A more comprehensive approach to the whole of the Amazon. That is also necessary to see the Amazon as one entity that needs to be protected in many ways, which again doesn't enter into contradiction with what you're saying. On the contrary, they complement each other.
Thank you for clarifying that. President Santos, you've been a champion for indigenous rights and also for the environment for many, many years. So how would you say that the rising temperatures and the shifting rainfalls and the ongoing deforestation, of course, also is shaping the resilience of the Amazon?
Well, it is, and that's why we're approaching that tipping point that could be irreversible. That's why we have to act more effectively. And we are seeing the effects of what is happening already, not only within the Amazon, but the rest of the planet, where what happens in the Amazon has consequences. And the rains in my country, in Colombia, we have the Amazon, part of the Amazon is in Colombia, but the source of many of the climate phenomena and the water, it comes from the Amazon. And so when we start seeing changes within the Amazon, you see changes all around the world. And the resilience, if we continue to weaken the different components that Marina was mentioning, when we compared, or we use the analogy of a human body that has different organs, when we continue to weaken the organs, then the whole body starts weakening, and that's one of the biggest problems. Now, you mentioned the indigenous communities. The indigenous communities, I am here in COP30 because of the indigenous communities that many years ago taught me the importance of nature, taught me and showed to me how if I wanted to make peace with the guerrillas and the peace in my country, I had to make peace with nature at the same time. Otherwise, the peace among humans will not be effective if we don't make peace with nature. And I've been learning from them, and I've been admiring more and more the accumulated knowledge that they have. And this is a knowledge that right now we have to hear with better ears. We have to take them into the discussions, and not only take them into discussions, empowering them to show us the way how to protect the Amazon. They are the ones who know really how to protect the Amazon. So I think this COP should try to, among the different objectives, to try to empower the indigenous communities more if we want to save the Amazon.
Thank you, President Santos. So Marina, your work integrates mathematical models with ecological and social insights. This is really exciting. So how do other knowledge systems like indigenous and ancestral knowledge inform your research? And also, how can these perspectives help shape more grounded and also equitable solutions for the Amazon?
I think that's a great question, because for me, I think for the past 5 years, I've been working with indigenous scientists of a particular place in the close border with Colombia. So it's the upper Rio Negro region. And I think it's more about shaping the way I think than informing me, in the sense that they changed. It's like a key. I think I've reached the tipping point working with them, because somehow it changed my mindset, my questions, my scientific questions, because their knowledge go into a deeper level of myself, you know, if that's possible. But it's somehow, this is how I feel it. So what they say, for example, and in one of the first meetings I had, one of them said, we have to listen. And in science, in general, we want to talk, right? We want to speak up. We want to raise our voices. But then he said, we have to listen. We have to listen to the elders. We have to listen to each other. And he said that as a very normal thing, you know? And then for me, it was like, yeah, we do. But you know, this thing that you have inside somehow, but it's forgotten. So it kind of clicked to me that we really have to listen to each other. And then by listening, you have time to digest, to think about that, and then to come up with something reshaped. So for me, it's more about really exchanging information. So not only me telling them, but them teaching me new things, and then shaping my mindset to have new ideas, to be creative towards something else. And that connects to your second question, because I think, as President Santos just said, they have been living in the Amazon for at least 14,000 years. They know the place. And during this time, the transformations of the forest, of the environment, were huge. So they know things about change. So they also know the solutions. One of the indigenous person in one event today, he told me, yeah, we made a medicine out of a very poison plant. So, but the ones who don't know this, they just eat and die. But we take as a medicine. So they know things we don't know. And then I think for the solutions, the novel solutions we have to propose to really tackle all the crises we're living in, we really need to listen to each other, including different people within different knowledge systems, not only indigenous, but riverine and other forest peoples.
Again, here in Marina, there's a beautiful anecdote that I had with the indigenous communities. It's a long story, but I will summarize it. At the end of my presidency, I went back because I had gone to them to ask for their permission to become president. And at the end, 8 years later, they gave me a mandate. Make peace with the FARC, but make peace with nature. And come back and you give us back the baton we're going to give you when you have fulfilled your mandate. And I went back at the end of my presidency with the peace agreement with the FARC and with the SDGs that had been approved by the United Nations, because that was a Colombian initiative that was in a way accepted here in Brazil in the Rio +20 summit. Anyway, when I went there, they said, they read the agreement, said the peace with the FARC is okay, but the SDGs, we're not happy with them. And I said, but why? Why are you not happy with them? Every single country voted positively, not one abstained. 5 years negotiating, how many objectives, which objectives, many scientists participated. What is it that you say is lacking? He said, the most important factor is lacking. I said, which factor? The spiritual factor. And they started explaining to me that unless the human beings treat nature as an equal and not as a second-rate citizen, there will never be peace with nature. And that we have to, our spirit has to feel that mountains have lives, that rivers have lives, that oceans have lives. And there was such a strong opinion that I repeat this, and every time I repeat it, people say, you know, there's a lot of truth behind that. And they gave me the baton back. I said, you continue. That's why I'm here. I mean, I continue the mandate, but they gave me this. This is something the indigenous communities gave you to protect you. This was usually this last 3 or 4 or 5 months. This was in July 2018. So it's been with me for 7 years and it's still intact. And everybody said this is a miracle. I'm trying to fulfill the mandate. That's why I'm here with COP30.
Well, thank you very much for sharing this story. It's a sort of it gives you goosebumps, really, when you tell it. So, President Santos, I'd like to discuss a bit more on the terms of policy and governance here, because, of course, they're crucial for large-scale solutions here and transformations to happen. So, from your experience, how can political leadership and also international cooperation really drive the systemic shifts that needs to happen to protect the Amazon and also the region and their people?
Well, the challenge of confronting climate change in general and many of the existential problems the world has, and particularly one of the problems is the Amazon, we need a different type of leadership. The leadership that we have had so far is not a ethical long-term leadership. They are worried about the short term, the next elections, the political cost of their decisions, and that has been counterproductive. So we need a different type of leadership that goes beyond the short-term interest. This is a very, very necessary. Unfortunately, with all the social media and what's happening with polarization and populism, that has become more difficult. But that's when real leadership emerges. And I am hopeful that we're starting to see that type of leadership emerging. So we need to react more positively with long-term view and take many times unpopular, difficult decisions. But that's what leadership is all about. Taking unpopular, difficult decisions that in the long term are the best decisions. And that is what we need. For example, talking about the Amazon, there is a treaty, the 8 countries that compose the Amazon Cooperation Treaty. For a long time, they were unable to elect an executive director because of petty differences between the leaders of the 8 Amazon countries. And who suffered? It's all of them, the Amazon, the indigenous communities. So that is what we need, a leadership that is willing to take the correct decisions no matter how unpopular and no matter the cost.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, Marina, one of the major developments during COP30 has been the launch of the TFFF. From your vantage points, what is this initiative? And maybe you need to explain what it is also to the viewers. What does this unlock for the Amazon today? And also, what long-term changes do you think it could catalyze?
Yes, so the TFFF is a tropical fund for tropical forests, not only the Amazon, but in general, for all the forests in the planet, tropical forests. And the idea is to focus on conservation based on this fund. So we receive donations, so the Brazilian government proposed this as a means to receive donations and funds to really tackle the conservation issues we need in tropical forests. And for me, it's a great instrument, and especially for conservation, because so many people, because of the carbon market now, is valuing more restoration, which is very important, of course. But conservation, according to the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, it's so more important to conserve than to restore. Of course, restoring is something you have to do for the forests already degraded or deforested. But conservation is really key to keep not only carbon, but water services and biodiversity intact, or at least functioning. So I think it's a great instrument, and I think it's going to help a lot. What worries me a bit still is how it's going to be implemented. So in terms of the actions from really receiving the funding and the money, how it's going to get to really the people to conserve, how, when, how much, and depending on which prerequisites, for me is what still remains a bit fuzzy, and I'm really following up to check that, because I think the success of this initiative depends a lot on the implementation part ahead.
Thank you, Marina. So, President Santos, we're at the last day of the first week of the COP. Fast forwarding to the end, what would you like to see as the top 3 achievements and the outcome of the COP that would safeguard the future of the Amazon?
Well, Marina mentioned one very important word: implementation. I have some experience in peacemaking, and every process has 2 phases: peacemaking and then peace building. You can sign an agreement, you can stop the war, but you need to implement what you agree. The same with peace with nature. We already have commitments Some of them are not as ambitious as they should be, but we have made progress. This is something that we have to recognize. Progress has been made. Not enough, but has been made. And what I hope comes out of COP30 is a clear path towards implementing what is needed and what has already been agreed to advance further. There's a phrase that the Chinese used that I think is important to make that a popular and a general commitment with their NDCs. We have this, but we have to strive better. We have to try to do better. And if the spirit of COP30, that we have a lot of geopolitical problems and differences, but if the spirit at the end is that one, we have a clear path of implementing, and people say we have to strive better, I would be very happy with that conclusion.
Well, thank you very much indeed, President Santo, and thank you very much indeed, Marina Hiroto, for joining us here on our broadcast. And we don't have time, and let's hope that what you've talked about here will really be addressed at the negotiations. The outcome will be very strong for the Amazon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Catarina.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Santos.
And this marks the end of today's broadcast. Please join us again tomorrow. And as always, you can find interviews and rewatch our broadcasts on wedon'thavetime.org. Thank you, and bye-bye.